All the pretty girls stand up. All the pretty boys stand up.
Pretty boys in the building.
Sway. This right here is my sway. Sway. All the girls are on me. Damn. Everybody pay attention. This right here is my pretty boy sway. 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 Girls on my pretty sway. Girls on my name. Sway. Pretty boy sway. Pretty boy sway. 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 Girl on my pretty boy sway. Girl scream my name when I pretty boy sway.
Soldier.
Get out the way.
Pretty boy coming through.
Happy New Year, comic book collecting community. Okay, that's a little bit premature. It's not quite 2025 yet, but tonight we are all going to put on our Nostradamus hats and we're going to give you guys our thoughts, our predictions, our visions of what's going to happen in the comic book collecting hobby of 2025. Last night, we had our kind of look back show, an amazing panel of comic book content creators, and then also me, talked about everything that happened in 2024. We went through CGC and we went through Bengate and all of the topics and drama, and it was a wonderful show. In case you didn't get a chance to see that show, the VOD is up. Put little nifty chapters so you can skip to the section that you're most interested in. But tonight, we're going to kind of run it back, same, but different. But this time, we're going to be talking about topics as they relate to going on into next year. Kind of feels like that's sort of the appropriate thing to discuss as we kind of wrap up here the month of December going into 2025. And I think that this is going to be a really, really good show. Thanks to everyone already hanging out in the chat, starting up the conversations. Thank you if you were there yesterday participating. And I hope tonight that you guys also put in your input to the topics and respond to us. Cause I think if there's good stuff to discuss or you guys have interesting, insights or ideas, we'll definitely react to them as we do. But, with all that little welcoming out of the way, let me just quickly say hello to some of you guys, specifically DT Key Comic in the house. Always the first person. It's very impressive. Derek Neiman, shout out to you, brother. Round 2, fight. Speaking of fight, ABACABB, what you know about the Blood Code Sega Genesis? Man, that's the nostalgia back in the day. Dark Horse, Happy New Year. Happy New Year to you, sir. We got Derek here with a comment. Mickey Finnegan of the House of Swaggle, the first of his name, the slabbed king of the bronze and the cameos and the first apps. Call of the great Rossi, shipper of Geminis and father of sanity. Wow. If I got that intro in every room I walked in, I think that would probably be obnoxious. John here says, sup, y'all. We got Godly Comics here. Manu ain't ready. Imagine. Wait, imagine. Did I lose my swag points on that one? Swaggle is late. I'm not late. There's someone else that's late. We're going to bring on the panel very, very soon. But before we do, can you guys guess the late person? Yesterday, unfortunately, Brian was sick. But I'm happy to say, preview, spoilers. He's here tonight, which is great to get, his thoughts. We have other excellent panelists. And so if you could, give them all a round of applause in the chat. Like the video, not for me, but for them for taking their time to come on the channel and have this discussion here tonight. But without further ado, let's meet our panelists this evening. In no particular order, we got Lawrence, Mighty Comics. We got Brian McClay, the man himself from Beyond Wednesdays. We got Rob, Neo Cards and Comics. And of course, Manu, the 99 Newsstand. Gentlemen, welcome back. And Brian, welcome to the, show. I'm so happy to run it back and get to hang out with you guys for another evening of comic book hobby topics. Thanks for hopping on.
Bad.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, absolutely. Nice to see you again, Swag. Nice to see you all. Brian, welcome. Good to have you.
Yeah. Well, Brian, I mean, last night we went into 2024 and I did kind of say that, tonight is the 2025 night, but, before we hop into that, like, was there anything, just in getting your thoughts, because I'd love to hear them, just 2024, it's like the year of comic hobby wrap up. What is your just big takeaways from the year?
It was a weird year. The roller coaster of highs and lows. I think we ended the year on a high. I think we started the year on a real low. And I think that's a good thing for most of the hobby. I think that we're seeing more and more people, less and less people grading their product. In my opinion, I think more and more people are learning to love their books raw, which is very interesting. I think we're also seeing more and more people enjoy reading a little bit more. You have some series out there that are really, really good that I don't think you had last year or maybe even the year before. I think that the fall on the secondary market is historic in my opinion, and I know we were at a crazy high from the COVID years, but I think Mighty kind of hit on it pretty well the other night when he was talking about some of the prices and some of those keys. But yeah, it was a very interesting year. I think 2025 is looking to be super bright, though.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, it's funny that you kind of said that, because definitely tonight I wanted to talk a little bit about the content itself, with regards to comic books, and maybe because we're waiting on our friend Ryan, Automatic Comics, who I'd love to incorporate in our CGC conversation. Instead of starting with CGC tonight, maybe we actually jump forward to our first topic, which I said better stories here. And this was something that I was actually going to hand off to you, Brian, first to talk about. In my channel, I usually do like a predictions of the year. And then tomorrow I have I'm going to check my receipts. Like I made predictions for 2024. And then I look back at my video and I'm like, okay, what I got right and what I got wrong. And one of my predictions was that I thought this year we were going to get better stories. And if you remember 2023, that was like Glenn Comic Book Palace. And he was like, oh, the writing is terrible. And it's all like the writer inserts. And so my feeling was like, I think we're going to get good stuff this year. And I think we got Ultimate Spider-Man, #1, or the Ultimate Spider-Man Hickman stuff. We got Absolute Universe. We got some Image series that were really popping off. And here's my question. I want to, hone in on the Ultimate Universe and the Absolute Universe, which seems to be loved. Now we're going into 2025. Tell me this. Why do you think is the success of the new titles going to continue to be that in 2025? And why do you think it'll be different with Ultimate Universe and an Absolute Universe? Because isn't this what we always sort of get? Isn't this just kind of a new #1 issue reboot with some hype? Like, is it really here to stay this time around? Like, how are you feeling going into like the stories next year?
I think that you're 100% correct. This is the same stuff that we always get, but we needed it. We needed Snyder to come back. We needed him and Joshua Williamson to get together. Joshua Williamson, the best writer in comics, in my opinion, currently, to come back with some major titan. What Mark Miller said in that whole, fallout from Glenn O'Leary's, speech, is that some of the bigger heavyweights need to come back to the big two. They don't need to go to the independent or do their own stuff. They need to go back to the big two, and they need to write the characters that we all know and love. We need to see Grant Morrison writing, Batman. We need to see Snyder doing what he's doing with Batman. We need to see, these titans come back and sprinkle a little bit of get up and go dust on everything, because it was really bad. I mean, there's some horrible writers in comics, and they just kept throwing them books, and they would swing and a miss on 90% of them, on like real big fat fastballs down the middle, like Spider-Punk. Like Spider-Punk should have been a hit every time he was put in a book, and it just what didn't work, it never worked. So I think that it was a good thing to bring in these big writers and get them, doing something again. That's why we're seeing the excitement on Ghost Machine. You got Jeff Johns and all those titans doing great stories over there. We need those guys back in comics, and hopefully that, it'll kind of have a domino and bring these guys back.
Now it's interesting because that actually kind of sets up another little part that I wanted to ask you about for this, which is talk about bringing back all like the writers, that everyone loved reading and everything like that. And think of like some of the titles that were successful this year, which were like the Transformers and, even, Dynamite coming out with like Silverhawks and Thundercats and, some of these titles and stuff. Like, is going back to the well the best thing to do for comic reading, in your opinion?
You need a dose of, an equal amount of both, in my opinion. I think you have these great characters with these great histories that we love to get stories from: Batman, Superman, the X-Men, whatever. But then you have things like from this year, Grommets pop up, which is, to me, my favorite book of the whole year. It's pure nostalgic hits for me. I think that we all love nostalgia, and every once in a while you'll get a non-superhero book that just rains down nostalgia on you. I think Grommets was that. I think that a lot of the independent books really outshined the big two. I think the big two jumped in, with Doom and Twilight, Avengers Twilight, and the Ultimate stuff, the Absolute stuff. But I think that the Skybound, Ghost Machine, those smaller image type, imprints really took won the awards, in my opinion. Skybound can do no wrong. Ghost Machine could do no wrong. And then you throw in the new horror stuff that's going on with like these anthology horror series. Ice Cream Man, I think, is at like almost 50 books, which is crazy. And it's been slowly, sitting in the corner going, hey, I'm doing something good over here. But then you throw on Epitaphs from all the Oni stuff, the EC stuff. You throw in the Creep Show stuff. You throw in, these horror books. Mark Spears Monsters coming in, and just, I know everybody's going crazy for the art, but something that you hear a lot of people talk about that is the story is actually good. And, you're seeing a real comic book guy do not only the covers, but he's doing the interiors at the same time, which Rob Liefeld just came out in a recent podcast and kind of said to all these artists out there, hey, show us what you can really do interiors. Let's see some interiors from you. So I think that's the fun stuff. That's the stuff that really excites me about the end of the year and where we're going to 2025. So we'll see how that plays out.
Yeah. What about like the rest of the guys here? I actually forgot to ask you yesterday, was there anything that you guys actually read last year in 2024? Or like, was there anything, anything that actually made you open up past the cover? And if not, which is fine, you're allowed to not read comics and still collect. But if not, what would actually make you in 2025 want to open up a book?
The only thing I read last year was old X-Men stuff. I don't read hardly anything new at all. I reread basically the entire, I started at Giant Size X-Men 1 and went all the way up through, I think I ended up slowing down around 300. So I did a huge X-Men reread throughout most of the last year on the iPad. So it wasn't even, I didn't even actually touch a comic book. Blasphemy, I know. But that was mostly what I read last year was old X-Men stuff.
And actually, what would make you want to, is there anything that you could imagine like a new series would like make you actually want to read it in 2025? Or like how would like Marvel and DC like convert you into a reader?
I don't even have a great answer to that question because there's so much newer stuff that I haven't read that I feel like if I was going to jump into something new to me, I wouldn't have to jump into like stuff that's coming on the newsstand this week per se.
Right.
The last new run that I read was the Genosha X-Men run from a couple of years ago that just ended. I read a good chunk of that. I never finished that, so I would probably go back to that before I read something brand new to the newsstand. And I would probably pick up where the new X-Men stuff picked up at. They just reset everything, like 6 months ago?
Yeah. It's decent too.
Yeah, I've heard decent things about it, so I would probably jump back into that and try to play catch up on some X books.
I'll just real quick. I would suggest you don't even finish that Hickman run and just jump back in. You know what I mean? Like the way that they did it with the X-Men. I think you've read enough X-Men and you know enough to understand kind of where they're going. That Hickman run was so convoluted to me. It was just,
I got a little lost in the sauce and X of Swords and kind of lost my way. And I'm like, do I really need to read all 27 parts of this or whatever there was?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's hard to like, have to feel like you have to like study calculus to read like Hickman stories, sometimes.
Yeah. And the Marvel Unlimited app doesn't do you any favors when you're reading on there, when you're reading convoluted things that jump from books to books of just, I don't know why they just don't say like, here's just what to read next, go read it, versus making you jump and go dig for it. Like they could do such a better job with that.
Yeah. What about you, Manu? You were kind of like nodding, or you had a little something to say.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's a quick one for me. I don't remember what I remember one day I was like, I want to read something. See, I typically don't read much of anything, right? I'm consuming information, and what I do to relax just hasn't been reading. And I don't know what year this came out, and but I guess it was a trade. I picked up a trade paperback of The Me You Love in the Dark. And is that written by Scotty Young? Is that correct? It might be. I forgot who it was.
I'm not sure. Brian
But
knows, or chat will let us know.
Yeah, and I'm sorry if I'm wrong, but I was at Barnes and Nobles one day, and
Yes.
yeah, and I just had a desire to, right? So I went into the trade paperback section, and I'm just looking at things, and I picked that up, and I remember being fascinated by that when people would share it online, and I like that sort of art, I like that sort of dark, sort of like mysterious sort of mood, and it was a quick read, but I enjoyed it so much. And I remember I took a picture of it. I was slapped it on my desk, took a picture of it. And I said, if anyone has any other recommendations, because I don't know squat about new things, like I would love to hear them. And people did give me some recommendations that they thought would fit into that sort of category. But I never went and acted on it. Never bought any new trades and read them. But I do want to, because it was enjoyable. Maybe it took 30, 40 minutes. It wasn't like a long amount of time. And it was rewarding though. I was like, yo, the art is cool. The story's interesting. And so it kind of captured me, and maybe I'll do some of that in this year as well. Like get the itch and just take someone's recommendation and buy the book, because I haven't done much reading at all since like probably the last time I did was like 97 maybe. So, but that was nice to see. It was fun. It was dope. And I listen to all the conversations when people are saying, writing needs to get better, and people are afraid of, the introduction of AI writing, so on and so forth. They're not afraid, but maybe there are concerns there. And I just don't know what's good and what's not. But when someone makes a recommendation in 2025, I likely will pick it up to read it. As long as it's not a novel. I'm not going to be reading any novels, I don't think.
Right. What about you, Mighty? Anything you read this year, or go ahead?
I've been reading trade paperbacks. Like I went back and reread Batman: The Long Halloween. I picked up Deadpool versus Marvel Universe. I haven't read that yet, but I have a bunch of trade paperbacks that I've been stacking for when I do have time. But the one thing I wanted to bring up, because I have felt this, and when you start with Brian, he made some really good points. But for the vintage guys, the people who collect vintage comics, with the market the way it's been for the past year, where a lot of people don't want to jump back in, or they don't want to spend money right now because with prices have been dropping or the economy being bad, having the new books, so much hype around the good stories, the great art, all the great feedback we're getting from everybody else, it's taking vintage guys. I've gone into it as well because I haven't bought much this past year. So having like the past 3 or 4 months for me specifically, I've been getting into more weekly books because of all the great things that I've been hearing. So I want to hear from everyone out in the comments, other collectors. Have you had the similar experience? Because the vintage market has slowed to a point where I'm starting to get excited about what's coming out every week. I'm looking forward to, if I like this book with the monsters covers. I haven't gotten number 1 yet because I missed out on the issue. So I had to order one. I'm waiting for it to come in, but I'm excited to read that book. So all the new things that are coming out, all the great things that I've been hearing, some of the stories I have read, like Ultimate Spider-Man, is getting me excited to get back into new comics. And for me, I haven't had that in a while. So I do think it's good for the collector and the industry itself.
Yeah. I think, I made a video after New York Comic Con where I was talking about how like I think I titled it like the hobby you remember is never coming back,
Yeah,
and it was something that was kind of like addressing maybe what I was feeling in comment sections, which is like a push against like new comic books. Like, cause I might cover like, hey, Ultimate Spider-Man 1 is selling like crazy. That's great. Like, I'm actually saying like, this is a good thing, and I would get a lot of the pushback of like, oh, buy a real book, like a vintage book, or whatever it is. Right. And so I tried to address it, but suffice to say, my feeling on it is, I think it's important that people just kind of dabble around within the hobby. Like my true love and passion is always going to be kind of vintage collecting. And that's really what I'm mostly into. But I think of it as like, I'm not always in the mood for pizza, like it's actually okay. Let me get a burger every now and again. Like, let me check into the modern thing. Let me like get into Marvel cards for a quick second, like explore the San Diego Comic-Con floor and just kind of dabble when I'm feeling a little full on vintage. And I think that is a good way to just kind of take in the hobby, it just take it all in different parts. And then eventually when you're ready to jump back into vintage, you can definitely do that. Speaking of, we got Ryan coming in hot.
Made it.
Yeah, I got here.
Yeah. It's okay. It's fashionably late. We were just talking about comic stories and reading this year, and I was actually curious, like, did you read anything this year? Which obviously, if you didn't, you're going to be canceled and exiled.
Other than Sanity, no.
Oh yeah. Well, clearly, that doesn't, you can't compare that to anything because the writing in that is,
I mean, I guess if you're talking about like modern stuff, like no, I generally don't read moderns. I mean, I did for a little while. I have some stuff here my buddy has given me that I'm always behind on reading, but like that's one of the things that got me back into comics was my friend that is a consistent reader, has his pull list and all this kind of stuff. I think he still has a pull list. He does a lot of why am I blanking on the names? Like where you have like 6 books together.
Trades.
Yeah, he does a lot of trades. But like he got me into Walking Dead and Invincible. And so that's what, like maybe 14 years ago now, that's like what I started reading when he recommended it. And then it was eventually like about 6 years ago is when I got back into actually like buying comics and vintage stuff and all that. And since then, that's generally all I really look at.
Yeah. I'm curious, like, to bring it back to the theme of the show of 2025, like, if I'm Marvel and DC and I know that a potential customer is someone like a Automatic Comics who is like super into Golden Age collecting and stuff, I wonder, and I think to myself, and I stay awake at night in my marketing department, I think, how can I get this churned collector to actually open a new book or buy a new book? And I'm curious, like, is there anything they could do that would like what would it take for you to kind of like be like, oh, I want to check that out and open up a book?
I don't know if a Marvel or DC could do it, because like the ones that have gotten me have been the like the more like indie type publishers. Like those are the ones, and
yeah,
I don't know if it's because the content tends to be more adult or what it is, but like that's the stuff that really, like, I mean, I think I also read Why the Last Man. I wasn't a big fan of that one, but I finished it. My buddy wanted me to finish it, but like, that's the type of stuff that tends to interest me more. Like when I've gotten some like free books sent to me for things, like I've read some of the like current like Marvel stuff, and I'm just like, that did not interest me at all. So yeah, I think that would be they would have a hard time getting my money for that.
Yeah. Well, as Brian started us off with, it starts with the content. The content has to be better, in order to even have a chance to convert someone.
I'm reading Sanity this year. Swag is getting me back into reading, hands down, period.
I will do my part. I'm doing my part. Well, we're done with reading. Okay. We don't care about reading anymore. Put that thing in a thing of plastic. Never open the pages. All right. The way that comics were meant to be done, which is, of course, to send them into CGC. Of course, our next topic for the show. And we have a lot of things to discuss with CGC first. We're going to eventually morph into kind of a PSA CGC thing, because I think that's really going to be the big, face off next year. But I did want to start here with CGC specifically, which was kind of a recent thing that we were sort of discussing at the end of the show, which was the grading dates got removed recently from the books that are getting slabbed. Ryan, you made a video about this, and you were told that that was a mistake. And I guess sort of the question I want to like point to you with it, and you can kind of run with this topic, is if they are removing grade dates, but they say they're going to come back in 2025, what would it mean if they don't? Would it change anything for you as a collector? And why would it be good or bad to have grade dates? And is it any worse than any other changes that they have made as a company over the years, like removing label notes?
So, I mean, I think it would have the same impact as removing label notes, which is nothing, in terms of what people will, if people would continue to use them or not. But I still think it's not good. I think that stuff is generally bad because it's making it where you're losing transparency on this. But I honestly, I think if they decided to just go, we're not going to fix it, it probably wouldn't have much of any impact. I mean, I feel like the main reasons that you want those are, one, it's for like repress candidates, like crack and repress candidates. That's one thing. Like people are going to want to know, like, and you can estimate approximately when books are graded based on the serial number. So it's not like that information is totally gone, unless they change how serial numbers are done moving forward. But the other thing is definitely, I know we were told it was not intentional, but it feels like the Ben Gates stuff, like I don't know. It doesn't have to be tied to it, but it feels like it's like it's tied to it.
If we put on our detective hat, it makes a lot of sense, like everyone's talking about the 4 starting certs and books been during this period might be bent. So it makes a lot of sense that it was intentional. I hear that.
And I see a comment in the chat where, someone said grade dates are essential because all grading companies go through changes in grading policy over time. I mean, I don't remember if we talked about this last night on the live stream or if it was afterwards, but there was conversation that like CGC is like the only entity, I believe, that provides that grade date. Like CBCS doesn't, PSA doesn't for cards, so we shouldn't expect it for comics. So like, it's not like everybody does that. Now that doesn't mean that they should get rid of it, but I'm just saying, like, this is not a thing that sounds like it's out there for most companies. And granted, I don't look at other companies' grade notes, and I generally don't look at what's out there for card grading, but it sounds like it's not a common thing regardless.
Yeah. What do you guys think about the grade date?
I don't understand why they just can't give. To me, the more information, the better. Period. So I don't understand why they can't just figure out a way to throw it on something where you can hit a QR code on it and it takes you to a database. It doesn't have to be on the thing. It's stupid for them not to give us as much information as we can get. And again, shout out to my compadre Dennis Barger from Wonder World Comics, who hit one of the things that he said about Diamond Comics back in the day when he was having all the problems with Diamond. He said, I don't want you to be this company. I want you to be the best company that Diamond can be. And that's, I think, a lot of us that look at CGC, we want CGC to be the best damn company that it can be.
Yep.
And we don't want them to fail. So you got all these people that want them to do good because they're in the hobby and they're such a big part of the hobby. Just give us all that information. I want it all. Give us the grader notes, give it all. And if it's that much of a pain in the ass, to hire somebody else to do it, because giving us that information is going to be better to me in the long run. And if some other company decides that they're going to start doing it, well, I think that's a reason to jump ship to that other company if CGC isn't at this point.
It's better for you to have that information. It's not better for CGC to give it.
Right.
And more problems for them.
You're right.
And that's true. But we're supposed to fight for what's better for us, right? Like, that's the whole point. Like, accepting the fact that it makes them happy as a business to not have to give it to us doesn't serve us. So I like fighting for what makes sense for us. But Neo does always remind me, the businesses are there for their best interest, right? And so, like, I get it. But so Godly, Swag, really quickly, like at the beginning of the show when Godly put, imagine, like that's something that he always says. He puts a bunch of E's in it, but he's saying imagine, like, could you imagine? And that's like his signature. But if you don't hear him say it, you don't know that's what he's writing. Shout out Godly. And he just put something interesting here, and I'm going to tackle this real quick. He said, before they removed grade dates under submission tracking, they removed quantity count for a little as well. Currently, they have the years wrong for when it's received. For example, an order of mine says January 1st, 1970. So a couple of days before the grade date went missing.
I saw that on Instagram. I saw someone post that. They're like, or Facebook. They're like, my book's been at CGC for 50 years.
This is 1970. You guys are complaining about it.
Like, oh God, it's so funny.
Right. So there are some glitches that they were working through after a recent like software update or thing. So I am still hopeful that the glitch gets fixed. But there might have been with the glitches, there could have been some intentional changes they made that, like Ryan said, hoping wouldn't get caught. But I am hopeful that it gets fixed because I'm with Brian in that I'm always, like whatever serves the collector, let's try to fight for it. Let's get that. I like the details there. It's like it has to do with provenance for me. It's just like the more information, the better. What's next? We're not going to know when our book was signed, like the signing date we wanted, the grading date we wanted, the grader's notes. As much as you could give it to us. That's kind of what we rely on that company for, even if it feels arbitrary, provided. I think we just have to fight for it if they do decide that it's permanent. But Ryan, you said like no one would care, so maybe we won't fight for it if no one.
I mean,
ends up
people will
caring.
care, but they won't care enough to change their, in my opinion, their buying and selling habits.
Sure.
That's like, I mean, it's like, I would say like probably the most impassioned video I made ever was when they removed the notes from the labels.
Right.
Like that one, that really bothered me because it felt like it was like, there is no way that benefits like the consumer in any way. That only benefits a seller. Like that's the only reason you would do that. And this, like, if this was intentional, and I know they're saying it's not, but it kind of becomes intentional if they don't add it back. That it's the same. There's no benefit 100%. To the consumer. Now, the other thing I noticed lately, which had been kind of weird with the grade dates, I feel like I noticed this over maybe going back around like the last 6 to 8 months. Things had been getting really weird with how that grade date changed when people would send their books back in. So it's like if you were getting a book reholdered, it was like sometimes you'd get a new grade date, sometimes you wouldn't. And they were saying it was if they made any change to like a note or anything like that. And like that's the type of thing where I'm like, I feel like they should have had just like like if it was done right, like if you like how it was done right, it should have been like there should be a history for any serial number that remains the same. Like it 100%. Shouldn't, because the place that I really noticed it was I think it was one of the Action ones. I think it was that 8.5. And like, because I think it used to be an 8, and it was like, it had a really old serial number that started with like a 0, but it had a grade date of 2024. And I'm like, how the hell does that even happen? And so, but because I thought because it got a new grade, it used to be an 8 and now it was an 8.5. And I was like, I thought if you had anything change like that, it has to get a new serial number. And it didn't, and it changed the grade date. And so then it's just like, I couldn't figure out, like, it felt like they didn't have a firm set of rules they were using for that. And it's that kind of stuff that while it probably doesn't hurt CGC, like, it's just like doing that stuff right just makes them a company that people like me or whoever can come up. I mean, I like CGC, obviously I got books behind me, but I can not feel like I'm going to get torched if I talk positive about them. If they're doing a good job, but like, they're still, like we talked about it yesterday. We could not come up with really like a good thing that they did in the last 12 months. That's pretty bad.
We give them too much credit. We give them way too much credit.
Mm-hmm. That's a good little segue to the next nuance of this conversation. I want to set this one up for Mighty here. So going into 2025, obviously CGC kind of needs to repair their image a little bit from having the terrible year of 2024. But I'm curious, Mighty, to start with you with this, is what would you like to see from CGC in 2025? And more specifically, would you like to see something as large as like, hey, we're going to come out with a new case and we're going to have these marketing campaigns and it's going to be this and da and all these posts and videos and YouTube. We're going to play to win. Don't go to PSA. It's all that type of year. Or would you just like them to shut the F up and just don't mess anything up and business head down, look at your pen and paper and get to work and just don't screw anything up anymore? So should they play to win or play not to lose next year? What do you think?
I think it's a good segue because what I was about to say when you guys just mentioned, it just seems like every time they do something, it seems like they're hiding something. That's what comes off. Whether it's a date missing, whether them taking the notes off the front of the label, that's how it's coming off to collectors. My biggest gripe over the past 2 years, and that's why I stopped sending books into them, was the price increases. And I'm going to make my first bold prediction for the 2025 is that they're going to raise prices again this year, and they're going to use the backlog to do so. even with the impending
Mm.
PSA coming. That's just my opinion. I do think it's going to come. But I went back today and I looked at the pricing for a $400 book that you submit. It's $40 for value. Anything over that is $85. So for a $500 book, you're nearly spending 20% value of the book, and that's not including shipping both ways, insurance, all that fun stuff. That's why I stopped sending books in, and I used to send a bunch of stuff in. But back to your question, is that we spoke last night about how PSA has had you guys as like a liaison to the community about what we want to see. And we all know that they're just coming to market. They want to do the best they can. But CGC needs to have the pulse on the collectors and what they want. And until they do that and they try to manipulate things by taking notes away, pulling the dates off, and it could be a glitch. I have no idea. But because of everything that's happened prior, it just seems like they're hiding something, doesn't it? That's the way it comes off. So I would like them to I want them to do a mix of both. I would love them to come to the us, and not me personally, but the collectors in general, and say, what do you want? Give us a standard for what you're looking for. We're not going to go ahead and change everything. I understand that. I would like to say, all right, let's get a bunch of people to be our liaisons to the collecting community. Right now, I do think they're heavily, I don't want to say in bed with the dealers and people who sell books continuously, but that to me is just how it seems. But I would like some level of consistency. I don't want to see all the issues that we saw this year. And I don't really blame them for the swap gate. Yes, indirectly it was their issue, but I'm not going to blame them for some awful people out there trying to swindle people. But yes, it could have been prevented. But the Banana Gate thing, and then basically just saying, well, I don't have an idea how to fix it. They're not giving us any information. It just seems like they keep trying to sweep things under the rug. And that's the issue. Let's just not have any problems this year. If we could just start there, I think that's a win. But what I want is for them to do everything. I want them, all right, let's hear from the collectors out there. Let's get the right people in the right places to do the proper grading, to have consistency. We want all of it, but I don't think we're getting any of it.
Well, and I had mentioned that with in some group somewhere, is that that, oh my God. And now, man, I'm just on a rough day today. My mind is mush right now.
I think real quick, I just want to jump in on what Mighty said. I think the PR part is so important, and a lot of us have been talking about that for a while. And that liaison thing, you can do the liaison thing, that would be great, but just get a PR person that has their pulse on what the it doesn't have to be the industry, or you don't have to, but I'm telling you, if they had their a pulse on just the comic book content on YouTube, they would be much better. But they don't. They have no idea about. That's why they're so disconnected, in my opinion, from like the weird advertisements that they put out that just didn't hit. I just feel they're so disconnected on a lot of stuff. And if they had just a PR person that would jump on shows every once in a while, jump on a swag show, jump on this show, 15 minutes at a time to talk about, hey, if there's any questions, come on the industry show once a month, come on, whatever show once a month, that would help out immensely. But I don't understand why they don't want to do that. I don't get that either.
They don't need to.
Yeah. Well,
what is CGC's incentive to invest money in, hire a PR person, do all this stuff that we want them to do, when we spent an hour yesterday running down all the crazy shit that they did in 2024 that would doom any other company, and yet we sit here today and they're backlogged?
Well, I mean, the reality is I would say they must be hurting though, right? Like
they've lost money.
They fired a ton of people. And so it's not like they're still getting books, but I've seen other graphs showing like the submission numbers, like their submission numbers are dropping. Like they've got to be hurting financially. So maybe they should consider, like, some of these things might help them. I mean, I know I'm a drop in the bucket with like my submissions, but like we talked about yesterday, like I haven't sent in a book in over 12 months. And I think, I heard Mighty say he hasn't sent in a book for 2 years, like that kind of stuff. Like that'll hurt little by little. I mean, I mean, I usually, before I was sending in maybe 150 books a year, I mean, I was spending, I don't know, like 10, 15 grand or something like that, getting books graded. And this year they got nothing from me. And so it adds up, right? Like if
And
enough
you're also
people
hearing a
agree-
huge downturn in the amount of people that are grading books, which is, I know it's not just a CGC thing, but it's obvious that a lot of people are caring less about grading than they are just getting the book in general.
Right.
So, and that's a huge turn, in my opinion, and the people that I've talked to that have said that they're not grading anymore. You also have big dealer accounts, and when I say dealer accounts, I mean, I'm not saying guys that are sending in 100 books, 1,000 books a month type deal. I'm saying guys who have been in the industry, that have big presences in the industry, that said they're not grading with them anymore. They're done grading with them. They're going to wait for PSA to come on and this and that. And when PSA comes on, I think that's the moment where we say, okay, if CGC isn't going to give us what we want, let's see what PSA does. And I know, that they don't have to do anything, but when PSA jumps on board, it's going to be interesting to see if that's true anymore.
So
Yeah.
Well,
how
let me go
much-
to like, well, Rob, you can pick up with this, or Manu, or anyone can, but like, if someone like Ryan and Mighty haven't submitted in a year or 2 years, and you're in CGC's game plan room, you're thinking about, okay, guys, here comes 2025. How do we get Ryan and Mighty back on our team? Do we need to win them over with some kind of like, we're having a sale, here's the new case, like here's the new label? Or is it just like, we fix Bengate, we fix this, we're back to business?
I don't
Which
need a new
one is
label.
different?
I don't need pricing. Like I need Bengate is the thing that has been holding me off right now. Like that, I still am just not confident that that's resolved. And like one of the books I want to send in to get recased is an Amazing Spider-Man 28, and it's like all black cover. And if that has a bend in it, it's going to look like garbage, And so like I don't want to send it in. And it's just, and I have some other, like a lot of the Golden Age stuff I like pre-code stuff. I like the dark covers, and that's the stuff that's going to show it. And I know it was a lot more the moderns that had it, but I also saw vintage books that had it happen. And so it's not worth it to me, especially when it will not count as a reholder or a mechanical. They've said that, so if I have that problem, it's not like I can send it back in and get it recased again for free. It's like, you're kind of screwed, or you're paying money again. And so, I mean, I just want, like, the way I look at it is I don't feel like I should ever hear about what's going on there. It should just be
a
like
ref that you don't notice the ref in a sports game.
Yeah, I'm just sending it in. They're doing their job, and I'm getting it back. That's what I want. I don't like. I'd be perfectly happy not to be able to make videos about CGC, doing something that's damaging books or causing some drama or whatever.
Full
do you guys think?
disclosure. I was going to say full disclosure before I let you go there. Like, I've never had an issue with CGC when I've sent books in and gotten them back. Like, they came back with what I thought was the appropriate grade. I never got, like, maybe in all the books I've sent in, maybe one case was cracked. So it's always been a positive experience for me. Everything that's gone on since my last submission and the prices where they've gone on, the 1 year where they increased price 3 times in a year, that really got to me. But other than that, like, they've never done anything to me. So I don't hate CGC. I would love to continue to use them and submit books, but it's gotten to a point where I don't think it's necessary at this point.
Well, I mean, so I'll say same thing. I've never had a bad experience. I've had like a couple books where I disagreed with the grades and I cracked and resent in, some little things like that. And like you, I think maybe I've had one cracked case or a couple cracked cases. But when the whole reholder gate thing happened, I was like, okay, I've got to wait at least to see if they make a new case design, because I don't want to have like the last ones that have this problem, and then you have the people that are doing what they're doing with the Bengate books and trying to look for dates and not buy books that were graded in that date. And then they had the Bengate thing, and I didn't want to deal with that. And so, like, I don't have any problem sending in now. However, I will say I do still think that there is a lot of value in sending to CGC, because of what I talked about, I think yesterday, in that it makes it so I don't have to argue, and it's not even arguing. It's like potentially deal with conflict on what the grade is of a raw book. It takes that, like, if somebody doesn't like the grade CGC gave, fine, don't buy the book. But like, it takes that part of the sale side of things out of it for me. And so there, and some books that I like, when you reach certain price points, you just kind of want to have that or need to have that. Like, I'm not sending in books that are $100 or $200 books. Like, I've got some books sitting around that are, a few grand that I want to get them graded, because it does make it easier to sell those books.
I want to jump in real quick. I want to say a bunch about some things that everyone has said, but that's not going to work. So I'll start by saying, contrast to what Mighty and Automatic said about not personally having issues, which I'm going to actually add to what Automatic said and kind of challenge you a little bit, Ryan, on that one. And you'll see why in a minute. I have had several personal issues with my submissions, dating back to my very first submission, which was 4 books, of which 3 had issues. 2 were damaged, and 2 were actual book damage, and 1 was case damage. And what I chose to do, it doesn't matter. It's a longer story. But from my first submission, many, many years ago, regularly, I've had some issues here and there. So I feel like, even though I don't do hundreds of books a year, if I have a high percentage of error and concerns, then I just kind of extrapolate that. I think that's the word. And of course, I talk to people that have issues as well. So Mighty, I'm really happy that you haven't had any issues. Obviously, we all know people that have, right? There are real concerns. It's not like we're not saying that. But Ryan, what I wanted to challenge with you a little bit, and Vexer said it here as well. He said, I've had books ripped by the staples with wrong labels. Now, the staple ripping part is the part I want to focus on real quick. You said you haven't personally had issues. But if you've ever had a book and then sold it, and then the case was the reason that the book became damaged.
Yeah, I mean, I know there's a book I sent to you, but I didn't get that book graded. So I bought that. So it's not like that. It's not like that book was a submission issue with me. I have absolutely seen books that have had the covers removed, that kind of thing, from like the static or whatever, like sticking to the inner well and then it shifting like that. That's actually why I have on a number of occasions said, I do not think, because when I see people all the time say that they want to get a book graded to protect it. And I say that is not the best way to protect a book. The best way, if you just want to protect the book, is like a full back and a Mylar, and that maybe two backing boards. Like, that's about it.
And safe storage. That's it.
Yeah, and safe storage. Like, grading a book, you have the risk of, I mean, there's a couple things. One is the interior pages shifting, which tears out. You also have just the weight. If you keep the book up, like over time, I've seen books where they get those little staple tears, like, and there'll be a 9/8 in the case and they aren't. Like, I mean, I remember Otto with 3 Men in a Basement. He made a video maybe like a year ago. He had his ASM 361 that the book, the weight of the book had pulled, down through the paper. So that the book would shift up and down, like it was still attached, but now there was like a little slice, at the state. Like, that stuff absolutely happens in those cases. And like we talked about with Giant Size X-Men 1, the right edge, that right edge gets damaged all the time in that case.
Tell me if you guys have ever exactly. A lot of stuff happens in the case, and something new was brought to my attention recently. So tell me if you guys have ever had this experience. So I can bring out an example, but I think most of us here are familiar enough for me to just illustrate it. So the inner well sometimes has none of those plastic wedges, right? But sometimes they introduce those plastic wedges either on one side or on the bottom. And generally speaking, they're about 1 inch high, and they go up over the book, and you can see them from the back of the slab. I was having a conversation with someone selling a book, and I asked for detailed pictures of the book. This was a couple $1,000s sort of book. And I just felt it was more of a gift grade than anything. So, and he agreed. He said, no, I understand you don't want this in your collection. I said, thank you for sending me everything. And he said, but this isn't the only nonsense the CGC has pulled. Look at this example. And I don't know who knows the person or the book. It's a pricey book, so I'll leave that out. But this was a book that was from the 70s. It had a white back cover. It was a high grade for what it was, several thousands of dollars. But he thought it had bump potential. And it was in one of the encapsulations that had the wedge. So the wedge was pressed up against the white back cover of the book for several years. He cracks it out because he recognizes that it has bump potential. And to his surprise, the actual wedge left a stain on the book. And I'll show you a picture, Ryan, because I'd be interested to have your opinion on that. But I don't know if it was like, because the lighting shines differently through the plastic than it does where the plastic isn't. So maybe like light changed the color of the book, but affected that area differently because it had an extra barrier there. But whatever the point is, now there is a permanent mark which outlines and shades the area where that plastic was, introducing a new way that a CGC encapsulation has negatively affected that book. And that was my first time seeing that.
The I guess like the only like, I mean, not argument against that, but like that's almost like the person storing it improperly, because it sounds, I mean, that's similar to, I don't remember if it was a video or what we talked about it, but there was a Avengers number, I think it was maybe a video I made, I don't know. There was Avengers number 4 that was on a Facebook group recently that was like a 7.5, but it was super faded. And you're just like, that book is not a 7.5. And the person recognized that. They knew it, and they got it for a great price. They probably got it for the grade that it actually is, like a 5 or a 5.5 type price. But it was pretty clear that that was one that had probably just been stored in the sunlight. And what you're saying, what you would be saying is like, it's just that if that plastic wasn't there, the fading maybe would have been even. But,
Yeah.
but instead you have something that's like an outline, and which isn't necessarily better, but it's still, it feels like that's probably just someone who kept their book out in the light for maybe
and
too
that
long.
could be it. And I'm going to share pictures with you because that could be it. Worst case scenario, they're not using some sort of like archival material, and there's like a gas coming out of that plastic that's actually staining the book. Like, that's me being crazy. I don't know. But again, that was just a new one. And what Rob said, you know, like he said, rightfully so, he said, like, why would they do PRs? Things seem to be working. And like Drew said yesterday, they're still top billing. We're still talking about them. And then the argument of all press is good press or no press is bad press. But, you know, there is an effect to it, right? Like when you said, Ryan, when you said, you know, your submissions are just a drop in the bucket, but you may have reduced your submissions by a couple hundred, but how many thousands of people are listening to you say you don't submit?
Yeah, I know. And that's true. But I just, that's where I don't really know. Like, we get an idea how many books some of these like bigger dealers send in. I mean, like Red Hood, like we see like the volume of books that he gets back. Like he's sending in thousands and thousands of books per year. And so that's where I have no idea what the percentage breakdown is on CGC submissions. Like, is it like 80% is like the big dealers, the big auction houses, and 20% is everything else? And so, you know, we don't matter that much? Or does it actually add up to where like the everything else is like 50% or 60%? And so without knowing, we really don't know what our impact is. I just know what I've done. And I figure if there are a lot of people that have followed that same route, that could be why they're having maybe some issues right now.
I agree.
Well,
please.
No, I was just gonna say, like, I mean, so it sounds like to me, you know, if I go back to my prompt for the kind of this discussion with CGC, really what they just need to do is kind of like that SNL skit, just fix it, you know, just fix it. That's it. And that's what they need to do to have a great 2025.
I agree. I forgot to say, they don't need any bells and whistles, no funky stuff, no specials, none of that nonsense. I don't care if the prices go up or down. I'm intentional about my grading, the extra cost. If that is going to affect my margin in my grading, it's probably a book I shouldn't be grading. So all I need from them is accurate grading, a flatly encapsulated book, quality control, no cracks, no stains. That's it. That's their job. That's it. I don't care about nothing else. Do whatever you want with the prices unless it's unreasonable. I just need it to be accurate. And the last thing I'll say in regards to what Neo said about, you know, why would they need to do PR? We all know this. They didn't need to because they didn't have competition. And so hopefully PSA delivers that pressure, because then it's going to matter.
Here's the thing though, and I'll just add this and say the comic guys are not running the company anymore. It's fairly obvious. And that's why when Rob said, you know, why would they do all this stuff? Why would they need that? It's because the guys with the real knowledge that probably want to fix things are not the ones calling the shots.
Very well put. Well,
True.
Hopefully the people in charge over there at CGC know that they just need to fix it. And that should be their 2025 strategy. # just fix it. Now, there is another company that's coming out, and I don't know if they can just fix it for 2025. They might have to have a different strategy going into the comic grading market. Of course, PSA, guys, is opening up the official division for comic book grading. We don't exactly know when it is. My suspicion would be that they're going to do a San Diego Comic-Con kind of rollout announcement. And I mean, that would make sense to me. So I would suspect a Q3 type of opening their doors. But let me start with Rob here, as someone who could speak to the card side in a significant way. PSA is coming in. But one of the first things I want to hear from you as they roll out, of course, they got to get everything right. But of the things that they can do in their rollout, like coming out with a great label, coming out with competitive pricing, coming out with a secure slab, coming out with a great commercial that has flamethrowers, shooting and stuff like that, or just providing customer service, or it's like the easiest, tech-driven submission form on their website. What do you think is the most important thing that they have to get right out the gate in 2025?
Grading,
I mean-
accurate. Sorry.
I mean, the most important thing to the masses is how much do they resell for on the secondary market, but they technically don't have control over that.
Yeah, what do they control? That's the most. But we'll get into the values for sure.
I think the big thing, just given what we kind of went through last year, is going to be like how good is the case. And it really shouldn't matter in the grand scheme of things, but as dumb as it is, the label's going to be important. And we don't know what that's going to look like yet. We know that they're actively revising it. Beyond that, that's about as much as we know. We have not seen the final case either. We saw the prototype. They have resized it down to the same size as CGC, so it's going to be the industry standard case. We know that, but we don't know what it actually looks or feels like. We know it's UV protected, which is already a major improvement over what we currently have.
Do we know how much UV protection is? Because I know like the CBCS does, but it's like almost nothing.
Yeah, it's 99%.
Okay,
so it's basically as high as they could get it without them saying it's 100%. I think we know, just based off the prototypes that we've handled in our talks with them, that I have a lot of faith that the case is going to be very secure. It's probably going to be a pain to crack, if I had to imagine. But I think, as stupid as it is, those superficial things are going to be important. And then out of the gate, it's going to be important for someone not to get them. How many people are going to crack purple label books and send them in to try to sneak something past them so they could do the gotcha video, or not even the gotcha video, but just flip them and resell them on the market when they know that there's some piece of maybe minor restoration on there that they think, oh, maybe I can get this past them because they're the new grader. So I think avoiding landmines and coming out with a secure case and a clean label are probably the most important things. You could obviously say consistency in grading, but to be honest, how many grading companies in anything are super consistent? Everyone's going to have their, I thought it should have been this, or that's overgraded, or that's undergraded. Yeah. You're going to have that no matter what.
I mean, they need to grade it similar to CGC. That's what they need to do.
Yeah.
I mean, you can't
of course
grade harsher.
Well, to me, the interesting thing, important,
but it's stack rank,
Yeah. To me, the curious thing is going to be is how do they handle 9.9s? Because they have a fresh census out of the get. So, like, are they going to grade books true to form? Like, if a book is a legit 9.9, are we getting legit 9.9s out of the gate? Or are they going to, like, pop control them, kind of like CGC did for years?
Guys,
my guess would be that they're going to hand out 9.9s if the book's a 9.9 because they're starting fresh and clean. And what's more enticing, what PSA won the card world and destroyed Beckett because 10 is more than 9.5. It came down to a
lizard brain, bigger number.
Yeah, bigger number, better. Now, I don't think they're going to throw out 10s willy-nilly. I really don't. But I could see 9.9s coming out, on ultra modern stuff on a regular basis.
That's what I was about to. You brought it up now, and you were getting to it, and it because we hadn't talked about it. That's my concern, or one of the things I'm scared of, and I've had the conversations, but it scares me still. They are in the business of 10s, and obviously comic books are a different monster, and we have a different breakdown in the grades, and they know and appreciate and respect that. But PSA is so much in the business of 10s. But you just said you don't think they're going to willy-nilly give out 10s, and I really hope they don't, because that that the credibility won't be there if there's just a bunch of 10s coming out. And I think that
People
would
will
be,
price them like
Well-
9/8, CGC 9/8.
well-
That's what would happen
Yeah.
if
Yeah.
they did.
Well, Manu, what do you think that they need to do right? You know, their very first step. Does their label need to be dialed? Do they need to be cheaper than CGC? You know, what is the stack rank? What is the most important thing? What would be the worst video that all of us could make? You know, it's like the thing that they don't want us to see is like, oh, my case fell apart. And we all have videos with our thumbnails with our hands over our face. Like, what's the one thing they cannot screw up?
yeah, no, I don't know that the one thing top of mind, but I love how Neo put it. They just need to avoid gotcha moments. Like if someone's going to crack out that purple label book from a CGC or any other grading company's restored book or color touched book, and it gets by PSA, that video cannot happen, at least not early on in their career. Like mistakes happen, but they got to avoid that gotcha moment. They have to operate with top integrity and really hope to be as accurate as they can. I like what Neo said. He's like, you know, consistency is going to have its give and take, or whatever. It's up and down. But I guess I was looking at accuracy different than consistency. I think even if you're grading accurately, you still have that ability that, you know, a 7.5 might come back an 8. You know, you're still accurate, right? Like when you're in the 6.5, 7.0 range, it's still accurate. And if you don't agree with it, you could give it another stab or whatever. But the accuracy in 9/8 would be really important to me. Like I don't want to see a 10 that I look at and has a tick on it, you know, and they're like, oh no, it's a perfect book. Because how am I supposed to support that? You know, the way that I am, the things that I'm critical of, how am I supposed to endorse or support? So I really would like them to just operate really above board, you know, full transparency as well out the gate. Avoid the gotcha moments like Neo said, because everyone's going to be looking for them, because that's going to be the big content, you know. But I like what he said, because I just jumped out and said accuracy, but he opened my eyes to things and put it into perspective for sure. Like the case security out the gate has to be there. Now I'm nitpicky and I don't want to, you know, focus on anything negative, but like, and I know a lot of us are accepting of things and it's fine, but like, I don't want to see Newton rings, you know, in the first batches of books. But I know that's a concern. I know that's a hard thing to eliminate, especially when you're just engineering new
But I
relationships.
thought they weren't
of
supposed to
plastic.
have Newton rings, right? Like
The thing
Yeah,
is,
they
they have, and you know, I'm supposed to be the shill. So what am I doing, right? But they have managed to, because even cards became victim of Newton rings, depending on what sort of encapsulation it was, and even I think that the surface of the card can create them as well. But with their new cases, they have gotten rid of them, from what I've heard and what I've seen and what they've said. But just the truth is, we've seen some of the CGC PSA prototypes, and we have seen a Newton ring or two, right? And I don't know how seriously, I don't know what they're doing to deal with that prior to launching, but I hope they're dealing with that, because I mean, it's not the biggest deal, but right away, first submission, I don't want to hear my friends saying, bro, your shit's got, did Neo just show Newton rings on a PSA slab?
No, I was just looking to see if mine had any.
Okay, good. Thank goodness it doesn't. Yeah, that's what I don't want, right? Like, I just want them to have a clean, honest start. Grade the books, encapsulate them safely, give us the best looking label you can, keep the prices fair, turn them around quickly. The same thing we want them to.
Do we have any idea what the price? Have you heard anything about the pricing?
Like,
Like
can we
how
talk
that's
about that?
No,
Guys,
they
Neo,
don't.
No.
They haven't come out with that stuff yet. But
Okay.
what do you? Okay, let me move over to Mighty or Brian. Like, do you guys or Ryan even? Do you have one thing that you feel like they gotta get right in 2025?
Turnaround times.
Hmm.
I think turnaround times are the biggest thing for them. If their turnaround times, if they don't have something going into that where they're like, okay, we thinking we're going to get this, but we're going to be ready for 4 times that, you know, something like that, to where if their turnaround times aren't better than CGC or CBCS, I think that hampers them. I think if they are better, that could send them into the skyrocketing. And to me, this is just a personal thing. I don't want a heavy case. I know it's got to be secure and this and that, but that case was way too heavy. That first prototype case was way too heavy for me. And, you know, those turn into, you know, 25 books in those cases in a box, or 50 books in those cases in a box. And I think they're just too heavy at that point. So to me, those are the two big things.
Yeah. What do you think,
I'm
Mighty?
I'm gonna go outside the box here. Everything that everybody's been saying so far has been accurate, dead on balls accurate. Everybody wants everything, but I think the average collector doesn't think as far into this as we do.
Yeah.
But with that said, I'm going to mention something that nobody's mentioned that I've thought a lot about. In order for PSA to be really successful, they need another big company in the comic book industry to come along with them. CGC has Heritage, CGC has Comic Connect, CGC has Key Collector, for God's sake, like repping them and partnering with them and all these things. PSA needs somebody from the industry, from anything related to comics, a big company to say, you know what, we're going to promote along with them. If they get that, then we could start to see maybe a bigger push from them. In the beginning, I don't know. I would like to see it out of the gate. Hey, I want to see a big company promote PSA products, promote their slabs. Until they get that, I don't know there's going to be much difference. I think in the beginning, like we talked about yesterday, there's going to be definitely some influx because people want to try it out. But in order to have staying power and to be really successful, they need some of these bigger companies, at least one big one, to come along with them.
Yeah, I think that's very well said. I made mention in a video something similar to that idea where it's like, they really need to get folded into the ecosystem. Like how bold would it be? Like, we all are curious about the secondary market values, but like, imagine if GPA just said, we're mixing in PSA 9.8s with CGC 9.8s because we don't care. 9.8 is 9.8. And they just incorporate it, and that affected the fair market value. And because right now, let's be honest, GPA is CGC value. It's not comic book value. It's CGC value. And imagine if they just said, no, we're going to just put in all PSA data. And that's how they rolled with it. So yeah, I think that stuff would be very, very interesting. The partnerships, the alliances that they actually have. But really quick, before I kind of shift, we can go back into this. But Ryan, do you got like one thing that you think that they have to get right?
So, yeah, I mean, just real quickly, from what Mighty said, I think the tricky part with like an auction house like Heritage and that kind of thing is a lot of times they're not. So, I mean, sometimes it's maybe their books, like they have them in their inventory or something. But if they are trying to if they're having people, if they're, we'll say, managing the books that somebody's sending in, like they almost have like a fiduciary responsibility to have them go through CGC. Like that's tricky. Like if you say like, hey, you should send a PSA when we have no idea what those books are going to sell for. Yeah. And so that I think is a big challenge there. I think that I mentioned it briefly. The one thing for me is just that the grading has to be close enough that if somebody looks at that book, that they go, that there's not like arguments about, I mean, there's always going to be arguments, but it's got to be close enough to what CGC and CBCS do. There can't be like, we know, like PGX often has like, like they're known for grading a little easier. And it's like, it can't be that kind of thing. It's because otherwise then people will start looking at values and go like, well, did it sell for this because, we think it's actually a lower grade or a higher grade, or, and you get, it can get real messy there at that point. So now I saw someone in the comments say something about like, they're going to be all new graders. Like, I don't think that's going to be the case. I imagine they pulled people like probably from other companies, like prior graders or, that kind of thing. I highly doubt that it's like, well, we got a whole bunch of fresh people that have never seen a comic before. I imagine that they do have experience. They're pulling in experienced people that are likely experienced with either CGC or CBCS.
And they're taking applications, but they're vetting people. They're definitely not bringing in someone brand new, to comic books.
And the other thing to keep in mind too is, remember, they're not, I interviewed Nat Turner about 3 or 4 weeks ago, and he had said Q2 in regards to when they would start accepting submissions. They've been hiring people for the better part of a year already. So it's not like they're just starting out next year hitting the ground running. I mean, some of these employees have been working in the building already, probably already grading books for God knows how long, and going through and building out, how they're going to grade and all that stuff. So it's not like they're just going to flip the switch come June 2025 and be like, okay, guys, figure it out. Like, they have been working on this for quite a while before they even go live.
Well, let's pause on that, or let's say more about that and unpack this idea of, the grader, the head grader thing, because this was a little bit of a topic we started to touch on last night, but I kind of punted to tonight because I wanted to sort of save it because I knew we were going to get there. Now, the head grader it was announced for PSA, and I actually happened to do a interview, San Diego Comic-Con thing where I was asking the dealer some stuff, and one of the dealers, Bedrock City, said that he had big issues with that head grader. And this is stuff that I had heard, anecdotally, and I think some of you guys have also heard from various people that I think the head grader has a little bit of some baggage, at least with certain people within the industry, at least older dealers. And I'm curious, between that and then also the CBCS filing a lawsuit against him, which it seems like that's going to be kind of a nothing burger at the end of the day. But how much do you think that this sort of head grader situation is an issue? How much should PSA really worry about this going up into their opening of 2025?
I mean, if we talk about how we're in the weeds and people don't care about the details, well, then your average collector has no clue of Mark Wilson's history. I don't even know Mark Wilson's history, so I don't know. But I'm also not the person that says it doesn't matter. But I'm just saying, let's unpack it. But from the surface, are people even going to know who the head grader is? Like that part.
Well, the people around, in our roundtable, we've been talking about like, the grading's got to be, and like it'll start to fester. Like imagine they come out with a bunch of 9.9s and a 10s and stuff like that, like what Rob was saying. Or imagine like, the grading is off, like, it's inconsistent and people start talking about it. And then the conversation becomes, who are making these calls? And then Mark Wilson's name comes up. And it's like, did you know that he used to do, whatever the room, like, is this going to be a thing?
Can whoever's on the panel that knows something about it, can you share with me? Because we talked about it a little bit, and I hear that there were some controversies that previously he was involved in. But does anyone have any details on that? Like, do we know what the concern is with Mark?
I just have hearsay, so I'm not gonna.
Yeah, same here.
Yeah, I only have hearsay, and it's I don't feel like it's.
I don't think any of us are over 65 to know what the real issues were.
Right? Like we don't.
I've aged very well.
I mean, I'll say we talked about this after the live last night. PSA's kind of stance, at least from the card side, is, the head grader is PSA. It's not a person. I mean, they have a head grader. They do. But nobody really they're not a public facing entity. PSA does not parade around on the card side like, here's our head grader, go interview on shows or whatever and talk about PSA. When PSA wants to do that, they put out Ryan Hogue, who's the president of the entire company, or Nat Turner, who's the CEO of Collectors Universe, the parent company, and a few other key people. Like I had Elizabeth on the channel who's in charge of the pop culture division. But they put out presidents and VPs. They don't put out head graders. I don't think PSA wants you to think of grading as an individual person. Like CGC is so wrapped up around Nelson that it's a blessing and it could be a curse. Because if something goes sideways with that person, all of a sudden now the company is tainted because the person did something stupid. I think PSA's stances this is from me just observing the way that they handle it on the card side is, you don't need to know who the head grader is. The head grader is PSA. These are PSA standards as a company, not an individual person's. And I think that's how they handle it on the card side. And I think if they could probably do it all over again, we might not even know who the head grader for comics is. It would probably leak out. Someone would probably know, but I just think that's how PSA handles it. They don't look at it as an individual position. There is an individual there, but it's not public facing in cards at all. I mean, they have different heads of each individual division, but they're not.
But the fact that everybody knows already, like, I feel like that cat is already out of that bag, right? Like and maybe you could say like comic collectors don't treat it the same as card collectors. Like cards,
it could be, but to Manu's point, how many people that know, does the common collector going to have any idea or care?
Well, but that's the thing. Like, if what matters is if big submitters know and care, like the common. And so that's what, there was one person like that, that Mickey interviewed that cared, but maybe that's all it is. Like maybe there's like a small percentage care and the rest don't really care. I mean, in reality, I don't think it's going to have. I think it's not going to really have much of an impact, if any, on their like how they perform. But That's my take on it.
I'll say this. Couple things that I've learned just being in the collector world, especially the comic book world, is I thought that, just being a collector and seeing all the drama that happens behind the scenes in the content world, that was just a thing within drama in the content world. But then when I started dipping my toes into the industry a little bit more, I realized that drama is still there in the industry world. It's just a different type of drama. And mostly it's money based. These guys are always chasing around, money. They're trying to keep their margins, low, and trying to make sure that they're making the most money on stuff that they can. And I think that you have to look at that too, that some of these guys, they get into it with each other, and, they're quick to say, oh, this person's he's not a good dude.
Yeah.
But we had Steve Borak on the industry show not too long ago, and Steve talked about him both backstage and on the camera like he was a good dude, and that he had no problems that he had ever known, and there shouldn't be these type of things said about him. So I think that it's just to me, learning as we go, that the drama is just it's just drama. And you're always going to have somebody that, oh, I've heard this or I've heard that, or they could have had a bad day that day or something, and they're saying something bad about them. But again, nobody has ever said, it's all been hearsay. It's all been, oh, I think I heard somebody say this about him. Nobody said, exactly what the problems are. So with all that, I don't think that's a problem. And I also think that, is Matt, we talk about like, oh, Matt Nelson being the head grader at CGC. I don't even think Matt's the head grader at CGC anymore.
No, I think his official title is president, isn't he?
I mean, I think he's the president, but I also think I think he does still grade, which kind of says something, right? Where it's like, I don't think he should be. If he's the president, it seems like he needs to be doing other things than like flipping and counting 16 pages like every day.
Exactly.
Right? Like,
I don't think he's doing head grading anymore. I think there's other guys that are doing that, and that just goes to show again that what we think is really the head grader might not be the head grader, and that it really doesn't matter in the long run, other than what Automatic Comics says, that it becomes an issue is if you have these big, accounts that have a real problem with them, and they start talking to other big accounts. But other than that,
are the big accounts going to care if a PSA 9.8 sells for the same or slightly more than a CGC 9.8? How quickly are they going to forget about Mark Wilson issues?
Oh, if it sells for more, they're not going to.
I mean, anything. Well, let me put a pin in that, or finish out what Brian was saying before I pick up on Neil's thing, which was, for me, saying I live by in all things, default to trust. It's what was my experience with the person or the company or the thing, and start from there. And let's not let the hearsays and the rumors get in the way. And if it turns out to be true, we'll be like, hey, you know what? Those people that were saying those things, yeah, you were right. You get brownie points. But let's pivot to a little bit of, the vintage sales going into next year and that investing side. And, obviously with PSA, we can still stick on them. Like, the most important thing outside of their launch, the thing that they can't control in terms of like their long-term success and can they actually take down CGC has everything to do with the secondary market sales. So I guess let me start with Mighty here and ask this question. You made the mention that they got to partner up with the auction houses. I mean, what is it going to take for PSA to get that value to be comparable outside of just proof of concept? And does proof of concept really just need to be like shill bidding? Like we're a giant tech company that has way more money than CGC, which Collectors probably does. And they just need to like create a multi-million-dollar deal with Heritage and say like, hey, Heritage, I know you own those books, but if they underperform, we'll pay up to, the losses that, you get with CGC. Do they need to sort of like buy books into their system in order to get this happening? And then when those books go on sale, they need to shill bid them to make sure that they, at least sell for the same price. I mean, listen, that's what I would do if I was Nat Turner.
I don't think it doesn't have to be auction houses, but it has to be multiple companies. So for me to answer, how can they do it? I think that's only part of the way, is getting some of the companies that are already involved in comics, whether they be the auction houses. I saw somebody in the chat mention artists. You know, that's a small way. There has to be other companies willing to say, hey, you know what, we're going to go ahead and put our hat over with PSA because we don't like maybe what's going on with CGC. But until that happens, I don't know how they're going to do it. I don't like the thought of them saying, we're going to give you money to do that. I think there were a couple of people who, when CBCS came out with their new label a couple of years ago, all of a sudden, New York Comic Con, when I first noticed the label, I saw a Marvel Comics #1 in that new label. I saw a Batman #1 in that new label, like the first day, and it didn't do anything. So it can't just be little things here and there. There has to be something big that comes along with it. Now, we can talk all about, grading being right and the cases being right and all that stuff, but if the secondary market doesn't deem that one book graded at the same grade from two different companies are the same value, it doesn't matter what they do. But you mentioned something before about GPA. That's huge, because what kind of advantage would it have given? I shouldn't say advantage. What kind of help would it have given CBCS if they also tracked their data as well? If they were included in that, even if they did them side by side, like one row CGC, one row CBCS, one row PSA, whatever it is, it still would have been an advantage. Even if it wasn't different, there is nothing to track CBCS sales. I can't go out and tell you the value of something. It might not work out that way.
Go Collect technically has it, but I feel like it doesn't pull in much of the stuff. Like I go there and look every once in a while for books I know sold, and I'm just like, I can't find this book here. So
it's funny.
Apparently Cover Price does.
Cover Price does, yes. And I wouldn't. I mean, I don't know, but I wouldn't be surprised if they would ultimately end up pulling in PSA data.
How long do you guys give PSA to catch up in value? Because it's not going to happen right out of the gate. That's not even reasonable to expect. But what do you think a reasonable amount of time is to make sure their product is good, to test their product, to use them, to be accepting of the fact that it's going to be a challenge to get the same amount, but you're still doing it because you're fighting a good fight, trying to get them there, so on and so forth. How long do you give them to catch up in value?
Rob, what about the grading wars with like SGC and Beckett and all? How did that play out?
It took probably 2 years for SGC to bypass Beckett, like, consistently.
And that's a new company.
How would you say? Because I just don't have any experience with it. How would you say they did it? Was it just volume, or
it was they basically undercut them in price, customer service, and turnaround times, and did it by just getting slabs to market and having exceptional, like SGC. They don't sell anywhere near PSA values. Like an SGC 10 does not sell close to a PSA 10 still, but they are clearly the number 2 in at least modern. Beckett still does pretty good on like 90s niche stuff and things like that. But generally speaking, on modern and ultra modern, SGC like tripled down, and that's what they went for, and it worked for them, and it helped them build that basis. So I honestly think, like, as much as the vintage stuff matters, I think a good strategy by PSA would be to focus in on the modern market, like focus in on the ultra modern variant covers, the quick flips, it doesn't cost that much to grade this and flip it for $100 or $150, because that gets SGC's key was getting slabs in people's hands and getting people to use them and seeing like, oh, I sent this into them. I had 0 issues and I got the cards back in a couple of weeks. This was great. Like, I had a good experience submitting with them, even though I'm taking a 30% haircut on the secondary market. Everything else worked so good because of the quick turnaround times and the good CS. I'm willing to take a smaller margin hit on the back end. That's kind of how SGC did it. Now SGC still has not caught PSA. I don't know that they ever will. But SGC got to the point where PSA said, you know what? You guys are getting kind of popular. We'll just buy you, which is what they did earlier this year. They ended up buying SGC. So, that's kind of how they did it. They focused in on the ultra modern game with quick turnaround times and stuff. To just filter back one thing from Mighty said in regards to partnering, don't forget, PSA has major ties to eBay, which is not a big auction house, but more things sell on there than anything else combined. And eBay has deep ties with, or PSA has deep ties with eBay with their new PSA Vault, with direct submissions, and a bunch of stuff that they're going to be rolling out in 2025. So yeah, it's not heritage, but I don't think we should sleep on the PSA eBay partnership.
And the
Can I-
$1 million cards that sell on the auction houses are PSA. It's not as though that brand doesn't represent the top of the food chain when it comes to
Correct.
values
Yeah,
at those
yeah.
auction
Heritage
houses.
knows what PSA is. Like,
Exactly.
'cause
I have
they're
a
dealing
I have a
with-
question, and maybe Rob, you can answer this. Do you know, like I know when I've gone to card shows, there's a lot of young people there buying cards, selling cards, and I don't see that at comic shows. It's a lot of older people there. Do you know the rough age ranges of people who are, and it's a hard question because maybe you don't know, but like who are submitting and buying and stuff like that, as opposed to comics? I feel like the comics are so much more of an older generation that it really helps the card industry for a new company to have the younger generation come in and buy those things and submit. Where I think is comics, it's a lot of older generation set into what they already know.
Cards definitely skew a wider age range, and it's more exciting for young people for a couple different things. It's way more transactional based, whether that's cash or trading. Like, a lot of people just like to carry around a case and go table to table and trade, which in comics, that's not really a thing. There'll be whole events built around called trade nights that are just literally everyone shows up and you just literally trade and buy and sell for 3 hours straight after a card show ends. So the transactional like nature, I think, breeds a much younger audience. The gambling mentality and gambling nature of cards makes it skew way more younger as well. It's way more exciting because of that gambling like nature, whether you're buying into a break, buying a box, buying a pack, submitting a card for grading, whatever the case might be. And for a lot of the younger people, it's the flip game. It really is. It's the buy it for 80, flip it for 100, buy another one for 90, flip it for 110. Cards are way more transactional, and I think that skews more towards the younger audience. Like, I see way more. I mean, I see 10-year, like, I have been to shows and trade nights where a 12-year-old kid will walk up to me and swing his case around to me to look at, and it's filled with like $3,000 cards, $4,000 cards, $1,000 cards. And I'm just like, you have better stuff than I do. And the dad will be like, he started with a couple $100, and kids have the one thing that we don't. They have unlimited time, and they could sit and churn out $10 profits here and there and snowball it. And we just don't have that because we're adults and we have responsibilities. Like, it's a way different scene on the card side than comics.
So that was my question. Does it hurt PSA that the comic collectors are of an older range? That's my one worry that I have as well, that they don't have that younger generation to kind of fuel a new company. It's still some of the old guys who've been so used to what's in the past.
I mean, the other argument could be maybe that's something that helps like rejuvenate comics. Like if you've got people who are like, oh, PSA does comics now, and then maybe they start getting, like, that could be the other, like, the positive angle that you could take with that same concern.
Yeah.
I think the thing that's going to have the biggest impact immediately from just like PSA existing in the market, and we talked about this last night, I wouldn't be surprised if you see a massive growth in magazines this year, in values and in submissions. I think PSA is going to hit it off immediately on the magazine side, and I wouldn't be surprised if you saw values of CGC magazines increase because it's people buying them to transition them into PSA slabs, or just the fact that the secondary market demand drives up prices in magazines in general because of people wanting to submit to PSA for them. On the comic side, I think I just think we don't know. We don't know how that's going to play out in regards to the younger generation or whatnot. I can see them, Mickey and I have talked about it with the eBay partnerships and stuff like that. The liquidity to market that they could potentially have with the eBay partnership on those ultra modern variants and stuff, and being first to market on that stuff, I think could appeal, maybe not necessarily to younger people, but to dealers / flippers.
Well, we had something today. We had the Lobo book, Omega Men 3. Imagine a world where you could buy that raw, have it go to the vault, slab it, relist.
How long is that time period, though? How long is that time period that PSA you think can get those? Do you think that they can get that under 2 weeks?
You're talking for like grading or just the whole getting it on market?
Well, I guess it would be both. I mean,
So
on market would be the best because the reason why I'm asking this is because the window you have to make money on modern books is so small these days. It used to be a month or two. You could, flip a modern book, get it graded, and still make, a decent amount of profit on it. Nowadays, I feel like sometimes it's less than a week that you have. It's less than a couple of days you have on certain books.
Yeah, you almost have to have it ready at that moment.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yes.
that's one of the interesting. Like you're talking about the $10, $20 like little transactions. That's one of the interesting things that I've really enjoyed watching on the card side. I watch a lot of those like seller POV videos that are, like where they're selling at shows. And it's really interesting to watch those sales because they really do they're like moving volume as fast as possible.
It's
and
about
it's
how
like
can I
making
make
like 10%, 10%. Yeah. Over and over again. The other thing I've always thought was interesting with that versus comics is, I mean, there's still the card side still has, people that have problems with grading and all that stuff. But on the card side, it seems like there's a lot less like stigma around talking about price. Like I see these videos where people are like pulling up what is it? TCG player, like, and like looking at prices with each other and that kind of stuff. Like if someone pulls up GPA and shows it to a dealer, that dealer wants to like punch that person in the face.
No, I mean, it's extremely common to like you and the dealer literally be looking at like the last 5 sold and being like, okay, like here's what it's going for. Here's where you're priced at. Like, can we meet somewhere? Like, where can we get to that we're both making a smart transaction here? Like, you're going to make
the tricky part is cards sell a lot more, so the tricky part is the volume of cards that sell is way higher. So you get kind of more like a trend you can follow versus like especially vintage comics.
Yeah.
But
yeah, the other problem is like, cards in the case again are still the card, whereas the comic technically you're supposed to open up. So that's why there's always been that like allergy to slabbing and selling and flipping and all that stuff. But before I kind of move on to the next topic, just unless
I wanted to answer Brian's question.
Oh, go ahead. Go
about the speed the market thing. So essentially this is not fully live yet. They've been rolling this out in stages, and we don't know what'll be live day one when comic books go live, but we know that this is where it's going. Essentially what PSA wants to have you do is you'll be able to directly submit eBay purchases straight to grading. Like you'll hit buy it now on eBay and say send the PSA for grading. So even if everything takes the same amount of time as CGC, you're immediately getting the market weeks faster just from the shipping. Because instead of it going from eBay to me, from me to the grading company, getting graded, and then back to me, and then to market, it's going straight to PSA, getting graded, and then going straight to market. So that alone saves you a week to maybe 2 weeks.
The tricky part there is the pressing side. You have to really trust
and like I said,
pressing.
But you're going to have
they
that
did
no matter
announce
who
that
you use, though. Like if I send it to CGC, I'm going to have to wait on their pressing, or if I send it to my own presser, you know what I mean? So like that,
I just mean like we all know CGC pressing is like not the best. So it would have to be that PSA pressing would have to actually be something you're like, yes, I am comfortable sending, this book to them and that they're going to do a good job, like actually clean, which I don't think CGC does, that kind of stuff.
And I think
also how when you're looking at a book and the condition at a book is much different than looking at the condition of a card when it's not in hand, when you're just looking at pictures. So that's a big deal too.
Yep.
For sure. And I don't know that this is going to be perfect. And I think once again, a lot of this skews more towards the modern, ultra modern, not necessarily, an X-Men 94 from, 1970. I think this is skewing more towards stuff that came out in the last few years, Jeff the Baby Land Shark, that sort of stuff. Luna Snow, first appearance pops off because Swag makes videos about Marvel Rivals. But right now, PSA has a thing that they have set up with buyers. They have dealers in their network on the card side, which, and when I interviewed Nat, he said that he hopes this will eventually come to common collectors. Essentially, you'll be able to make your own want list. and say, I want this. I'll use cards for an example here, or let's just say we'll say comic books. I want a Jim Lee X-Men 1 in a 9.8 or a 9.9. Let's say a 9.9, something a little bit more rare. You could set up that want list, and the second that grade pops, you can have a standing offer for it. And the second the grading submission, the grades pop on your PSA backend, you instantly have an offer to sell the book before you even choose to ship it back to you, without even going to this is before it even gets to the eBay side of it. And then with the eBay integration, I just did a card submission maybe like 2 months ago, and I used the direct to eBay auction for some cards. I think from the time my grades popped, they were listed on auction within about 72 hours, running at a 7-day auction. And then I was paid out 24 hours after the buyer paid on eBay. I had the cash in my Stripe account and transferred to my banking.
Yeah, it's huge. I mean, I think all those things are really excited to see, like how they are implemented and how that affects the entire market. But overall, we're gonna have to wait and see, until it really happens. But before we kind of move on to the next
hear
topic,
about, that's really actually integrating technology into this. Like, I think that's pretty cool to hear that. Like, that's fun. Like, to me, that's a fun way to look at this stuff.
Which by the way,
go ahead.
Oh no, go ahead, Neil. Go.
I was just going to say, I think that's the one thing that people underestimate with PSA versus CGC. PSA is a grading company, but they're also a tech company, and they are very tech savvy. I mean, Swags and Manure in the building, they've seen like what kind of operation they're running there. It's night and day compared to the power that they have behind them is night and day compared to CGC. Whether they choose to leverage it all in comics, I don't know, but they have insane resources if they want to.
Yeah. I don't think they're going to throw everything at comics right away, but enough to get it going, and then they will, really, really get things going. But I agree with you.
3
the thing
years
is
on
they throw it all at cards, and that stuff trickles down to the other categories.
Yep.
Well, before we wrap up this topic and move on to the next one, just really quickly, I'd like to just kind of ask, in terms of just, I have investing on the ticker right there. And we all kind of know that comic values have been going down. I've been doing my comic index, and it continues to just, maybe didn't drop as much this year as prior years, but it's still from January to December went down. I'm curious, does anyone want to make the bold prediction in 2025 that investing is back? I could buy a Hulk 181 in a 7.0 Jan 1, and by December 31st, it will at least be the same fair market value. Does anyone think that will be possible in 2025?
No.
No.
Oh,
still on the
which book? Oh, what was the question?
181.
Like a 181.
I'm also just kind of interested in what Manu's doing there with like the glove. What was going on?
Show some things, because I just wanted to show what I'm going to be doing in 2025. My thoughts on investing, right? My thoughts on vintage. I'm a little different than you guys. Many of you guys, like the old school keys. I just haven't gotten there yet. I've had a Hulk 181. I think it's really cool. I respect the passion that people have for it, but it wasn't my passion for it. So I was also happy to sell it for a profit, right? But so I don't spend too much time thinking about like which books are going to perform well, so on and so forth. There are just other areas very related to comic books that I see nothing but upside in. The Hunt is amazing. They're less known, so there's a lot of opportunity to buy it for $1,000, sell it for $2,500 to someone that's been looking but doesn't have the time to find. That's where I'm going to be spending a lot of my 2025. But I just want to show some things. But you guys keep going, and when it gets to my turn, I'll show it.
Well, no doubt. I mean, arbitrage for sure is really the best way to make money in comic books. It always has been, it always will be. But like, I was just curious if that I'm investing. I bought this thing, fair market value. Will it hold its value throughout the course of the year?
I mean, I made a video recently where I specifically said I would not be buying silver, bronze, copper, modern books right now if your goal was that you think they're going to go up in the short term. And I had a lot of people say, like, why are you saying that? It's only bad for things. But I'm just like, I'm not going to lie and say I think they're going to go up next year. Like, I'm personally, like, for that era of book, like, there are books I want to own in that era, but I would rather wait until I see, and maybe it never happens, I don't know. I would rather wait until I see prices start to like trend back up or be like just flat for a while before I would buy any of that stuff, because otherwise I'll keep buying the Golden Age stuff that I want. Like I don't see any reason to go for those other books.
I agree. I've been telling people for the past 2 years, if you're not willing to hold on to 5, 10, even 15 to 20 years, and you're going to need money in that time that's not allocated to comics, don't do it, because you're going to get yourself in trouble. But the one thing I will add is that I lost my train of thought now when Ryan was saying that. But I'll come back to it. But yeah, if you're buying, high dollar value comics, and I'll go to silver and bronze, even a little bit in the golden age, you better be willing to hold on, because if you buy it, today, by the end of the year, even a couple of years, you still may be down.
Yeah. Manu, were you going to say something kind of related to this topic before I switch gears?
Yeah, related-ish. There are books that I think are undervalued and have huge potential, but there's no way to predict whether, at the end of 2025, you'll be able to sell it for the price that you bought it. It could take several years for some of those things to mature, or for, the values to reflect what your gut believes about them. But then there's just really interesting things, like without grading for the last year or even longer than that, as much as I used to, I've been keeping busy with historical things that I think are awesome. I'm always finding new things, researching them, getting excited. And when I share them with the community is excited, and there are buyers for these things. Like, for an example, the latest post on my Instagram page is the Overstreet first edition, the first official comic book price guide from 1970. And I posted a raw one, and I just kind of gushed over it, right? And the story of it's so dope. The first print had 1,000 printed. The second print has 800 printed. Bob Overstreet and his family apparently, bound these and stapled them together by hand and distributed the first price guide. It has huge historical significance. And we're talking about vintage, we're talking about investing. So that's, very closely related. And now the person that purchased that, I did sell it. It wasn't even made available for sale. But when something's dope and not seen often, you get your offers, right? And so that did sell, and it sold for close to twice what I paid for it, and I didn't pay cheap for it. So that's really exciting for me. And one of the things I wanted to show, this just came in, is that was the first print. And so I'm going to be doing things like this all year, because this is what it's fun for me. That was the first print that I just sold. The second print is blue. I have just came in. This is the second print signed by Bob Overstreet, but this is the cover proof. This was what he signed off on, one of the cover proofs to say, yeah, go ahead, let's print. So this is from 1970, signed by Bob Overstreet. The second print is blue, which is why this is blue. And on the inside page, which this doesn't have because it's just the cover, it would actually say second print. So stuff like this is super dope to me. And then, I'm a big Wizard guy, and people know that. And that's obviously big related to comics. And like the pocket guide, right? The Wizard pocket guide, not too many people know, but when they pop up, they sell for a lot. For instance, this raw copy was an arbitrage, and the friend that bought it is probably here watching, and he's not going to mind me saying, I was able to double my money on this, and this sold for close to $2,000. And I still have it because I'm going to photograph it and make a post and then ship it out. But these are really cool things. Only a few hundred of these were printed. Gareb Shamus, the founder of Wizard, printed this in 1991 in the back room of his father's comic book store. And this is what led to Wizard magazine. This is the second highest graded. But so for me, I love the idea of doing things like this in 2025, regardless of what happens to comic book values. Because if you're intentional about what you're hunting and you're able to find undervalued stuff, there's a margin for profit there. There's just more work to connect it to the passionate buyer. But that's my pleasure. Like, I like doing those things. So that's why I put on the gloves, because this is going to be 2025 for me.
Yeah. I remember what I was going to say, if you don't mind. So the one thing what Ryan made me think of, and this is what I meant to say in the first place, was, back in 2020, when Instagram kind of to take off with comics, it became a huge thing. And it's so big now that silver, bronze, copper are so readily available every day. Any book that you want, you can go on Instagram right now and look for it. And I think it's been really bad for the values of comics short term. I think it's great for collectors who want to go out and buy books because they're always there and it's a great avenue. But short to medium term, it's not good for the value of comic books. And that's why I tell people long term only, because everything is at the tip of your fingertips.
Yeah, well said. Shout out to Oilers Workshop here with the super chat. What you just described sounds like an attempt to add a derivatives later on top of physical collectibles, almost like trading digital gold representatives of physical reserves. Sounds scary to me. This is in regards to, this kind of PSA vault eBay interaction. I mean, yeah, we're in the world, of tech integration and flipping, and I mean, these companies, the big business, big comic book business is going to find any way to continue to extract value and fast value.
Is the vault planning on holding comics? Because like they only do cards right now, right? So
no, they'll actually do comics technically right now as well.
I didn't know if they held CGC things or anything like
hold
that.
Anything slabbed.
Yeah. All right.
Swag,
well,
just real quick, one thing on the 2025 value things. So me and you've obviously talked for years now on the whole, like what kind of happens in cards ends up trickling down to comic books to a degree. Like cards have always seemed to be the leading indicator on things over the last few years. I will say 2024 has not been perfect by any means. Like stuff still has trended down, and we kind of touched on this last night a little bit. But 2024 was a lot more stable year in the card market overall for at least non-ultra modern stuff. Like more classic cards have held a little bit better this year. They still trended down slightly, but we're talking like 5 to 15%, not 30 to 50% like we saw the previous year across the board. So I don't know if that ends up translating over to comics or not. Maybe it's a little bit bigger of a lag time, but it does seem like more blue chip card stuff definitely. I don't want to say it didn't go up, but it did not go to zero like it had been. The crashing red arrow graph on the YouTube thumbnail was less, less pointing down.
Not as steep.
Yes, not as steep.
Unfortunately, as we all know, to get that 1 out of 10, it's got to be dramatic, and it'll be hard to.
Do you have like an end of year market index video thing that you got in the pipe? Like, do we know how much Silver Age index dropped this year compared to the previous year?
Yeah, I'll be doing that, and for sure, it's going to work out to where it's like, if 2022 was 50% and then 2023 was like, I don't know, 30%, this year was going to be 15% or something like, it's going to work out.
That's what you're going to be doing January 1st. Like you're going to wake up and just start
100%
your index.
My massive hangover straight out of the club into recording. I'm going to be hungover. You guys will see me, saying comics are going to zero.
But if that trend continues, then wouldn't that make you believe that 2025 could potentially be slightly more stable price-wise?
I would say that everything shows me that it's going to be a decline, but less so. So maybe it goes down by 5%, or something like that.
And to what Mighty was saying, the differentiation between short-term and long-term investing, if prices continue to go down, that's a good thing for long-term investors that are picking up. So the time frame on investing, it could be a great year for investing if you're investing for 20 years.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, like I'll say, like the big thing I've noticed is that, I mean, I was buying and selling like a couple years before the crazy spikes started happening, and so like I have some experience prior to that, and now it's like before that, if you had a low sale, it was not the new ceiling. That's been the challenge, is that now if you have a low sale, it's like that's the new ceiling, and everybody's like, well, this one sold for this, and so now everything just keeps coming down. And so it kind of needs to get to that point where that low sale doesn't become this like point that you can't get back up above.
That's the biggest issue right now. That is the biggest issue.
Yeah.
Well, what's interesting on that is that we can't see a lot of the sales that are happening in these live selling platforms, in the comic and card shops. We don't see those sales. And what I've been noticing, and I'm sure you guys have been noticing, is for the most part, those sales are much lower than anything you see on, auction, eBay, world. So that's the other thing that you got to think about. I think that, we look at eBay for the most part, throwing Heritage there too for the bigger books, but for the most part, we look at eBay sales. And when you go and jump into some of these live selling rooms and talk to some of the dealers that are out there, the guys that pull up eBay sales are continuing to, I've heard a lot of people say, I'm just going to give them their books and walk out. I'm not going to, if I want to pay eBay sales, I'll pay eBay sales, and they'll just wait till they see it on a live selling platform or something. So that's the other interesting thing. And a lot of those guys on those live selling platforms, they're just getting as much out as they can. They don't care if they're taking a $6 loss on a book that they paid 20 cents for. They're just happy that they sell it for $4 or $3. So that's very interesting to me. I also think that the key to all this obviously is rarity. I mean, during the pandemic age, things that weren't rare were selling for outrageous amounts of money. Those Impel trading cards, not rare. Hulk 181, not rare. Incredible Hulk 340, not rare. All those modern books, not rare. Those things were selling for ridiculous amounts. And I think a lot of those new buyers that were buying at that time are starting to realize that. And I made a conscious decision the other day that to jump from a collecting mindset to a selling mindset. And I never understood it until it just hit me one day. And for the longest time, I have my retailer and my LCS friends and my industry friends talking about how they don't care about, how much they sell a book for as much as, getting that high level, because, or if they're going to sell a book and they're worried that it's going to be gone, because they know how often they see those books come in collections. They know that they're going to see another 3 Hulk 181s throughout the year. They know they're going to see 10 New Mutant 98s throughout the year. So I think that's also very interesting, is that a lot of these books that people were going crazy for were nowhere near rare, and a lot of those new collectors are starting to realize that.
Yeah.
And do you think they're better for it?
I want to move to the next topic, but go get it out.
I love that. I love that Brian brought this up. So I'll make this quick. So do you think that collecting is better for it, that they got smacked around, they learned their lesson? Hopefully some of them stick around in the collecting community and they just move differently in 2025, right? Like valuable lesson learned, and they're going to be successful because of it, or they have turned around and left and they're not coming back because they got burned?
That's a great question, man. I wish I knew the answer to that. I don't.
I think a lot of them left.
They might have left. Yeah, they might have said, they might have been burned. Like, how many people do you think got burned? Here's a perfect example. So many people out there got burned buying crazy retailer exclusives for $40, $50, $60 out the gate, going crazy for these things. And then 3 weeks later, or 3 weeks, 3 months, whatever, a short time later, they see that same seller offloading, 3 times the amount of those exclusives at $5 a piece.
Yeah.
And that killed, to me, that killed a lot of that, new interest that we were seeing from, let's be honest, I think a lot of new comic book guys were coming over from the card world and trying to see that. But man, when you see something like that happen and you're like, I just paid $60 for this, I'm being told that it's probably, I'm thinking that it's going to go up in value, and 3 weeks later they're selling them for $5 a piece, and they can't offload them. That's the type of stuff that we have to kind of also look at in the comic book industry as a big way.
I'm going to touch base with you again later tonight about the collecting selling mindset shift, but I know Mickey wants to get to the next subject, so I'll put a pin in that and I'll be back at you about that. Mickey, what you got?
We can come back and do final thoughts and bring that up, but I think it's interesting, whether or not investing will be back or how values will, affect the comic book market. But one thing that I think will still affect the comic book market, whether it be, due to FOMO and speculation, or maybe in a bigger way, are going to be the movies. The movies next year are a big deal, in my opinion. Now, we have 4 movies coming out. We have Captain America 4. We have Thunderbolts. But the 2 more important movies that I think that we really need to talk about and want to focus on here are going to be Fantastic Four for the MCU and Superman for the DCEU. And Fantastic Four, to me, represents, that first movie that the MCU is doing that is sort of like, hey, we're washing our hands of Phase 4, because Captain America 4 and Thunderbolts are still of that era, so they might have issues. But Fantastic Four sort of represents, okay, what we're going to get with Avengers. And then obviously Superman, DCEU, James Gunn, new direction for DC. So let me go to Brian here on this one. And I guess my question to you is this. If these movies are bad and they flop, how detrimental is it to comic book collecting?
Huge.
Do
Massive.
movies even matter for comic book collecting?
So
anymore?
here,
what do you think?
I would probably have said they don't matter if you would have asked me this, a couple months ago, as much as they do. But I'll tell you what, man, after seeing that Superman trailer, I don't know if there was a person like in my family or my friends that wasn't into comics that saw that and was just stoked for it, super stoked for it. I want to see that. I want to find out more about that character. What's up with the dog? What's up with Crypto? Like, very, very nostalgic. Everything about that trailer. That might have been one of the best trailers I've ever seen for comic book movies. And that was a major turning point in where I said, okay, for the longest time, I think that movie spec and TV spec was dead, completely dead. But if this movie is as good or better than we expect, or the hype that we're thinking, it could totally turn DCEU into what we were seeing with the MCU back during Avengers, Infinity War, Avengers Endgame, where you had all this spec. Everybody was specking on Thanos books. Everybody was specking on cosmic books. You would, a funny thing, I remember Suicide Squad came out and people are specking on characters that got killed in the first 4 minutes, like it was crazy. It was absolutely nuts. You could spec on D and E and F list characters and make money off of it. Do I think that's going to come back? No. But I do think that some of that, it could energize it. But here's the problem. And it's a big problem. Those movies have to be good. They have to be better than good. They have to be better than our expectations. And because our expectations, I don't know about you guys, but my expectations are so low when it comes to any blockbuster, Star Wars, Disney, anything that's coming out. My expectations are way low. And the response from some of these test screenings, unfortunately, have been really, really bad about Superman. That scares me. But I'm gonna cross my fingers and hope that it, like you said, if it does do well, I think it totally energizes that spec in the community. Not as high as it was, but it'll definitely energize it from where it is now. It's dead right now.
Yeah. Anyone else? How detrimental or how important are these movies as they relate to comic books? I know people don't like to know that FOMO gets driven in comic sales and stuff like that. But even outside of it, isn't it an important sort of symbiotic relationship that it's just a cultural thing that is obviously important for the industry for these movies to be successful?
I was just talking to a friend tonight about that. And I was talking about how my investing thesis, whatever you want to call it, with comics had generally been like, Disney likes to make money. Disney knows how to make money. And as long as they keep making these movies that keep people interested in the characters, I don't really care about the little spikes here and there based on a movie, but it's keeping those properties in people's minds. Then great. That is great for comics and all that in general. But man, the last 5 years have been hot garbage, just awful. And so, yeah, I also have very low expectations for I'm trying to think, I think the last Marvel movie I finished was Guardians of the Galaxy 3. I did not finish the Marvels. I did not finish Love and Thunder. I did finish the Doctor Strange one, but this is because I was in the theater. But I mean, if I was watching at home, I probably would have clicked it off. It's they haven't been keeping me interested. And I mean, I was different about the Superman trailer. I did not really care for that Superman trailer.
Really?
So the dog thing didn't work for me. And I love dogs. You maybe heard my dogs barking in the background. I love dogs, but that scene, just the cape on the dog felt too cheesy, I think. And I don't know. We'll see. I mean, I have a lot of faith in James Gunn because, like I said, the last full Marvel movie I watched was Guardians of the Galaxy. He knows how to make entertaining movies. And so I'm hoping that that carries over here. Like, I don't want this stuff to fail. I want them to do well. But I do have very low expectations. I have zero expectations for Marvel. Like, they've got to prove to me that they can do something well. And I'm not going to be a person that's probably going to go see it like opening night or anything, just because I'm just like, why do I want to go like screw around with like opening night with a busy theater that for a movie that might be terrible? You know, I'm going to wait until I hear that it's actually worth seeing before I go and spend like the $70 it costs to see a movie here. So I mean,
the one thing that I'm going to say is that people, no matter who you are in this world, for the most part, I think you know who Superman is. And every Superman we've gotten so far, James Gunn is going to give you a comic book Superman. So we didn't get really too many comic things in the original Donner movies, and for Superman and the Snyder Cut, to me, I thought wasn't a good reflection of Superman. You're already starting to see in the trailer that he showed that you're going to get a lot of things from the comics that we haven't gotten before with relating to Superman, and that may not go over well with a lot of casual fans, but the true comic collectors who kind of read a lot of stuff and know some of the characters. And I do believe James Gunn knows how to tell a story, and it'll be an emotional, good film. So I think the comic collectors who know who some of these characters are, they're going to get excited over it, but they're casual fan. And that's why maybe, Brian, they said a lot of people didn't test well because maybe they don't know all those things. So that's where I think we're forgetting. As far as Fantastic Four, if you look back at Marvel, they've had some good movies and they've had some bad movies, but there's only really been a couple of great movies like Infinity War and Endgame. To me, when you bring the Russo brothers back, you know what you're going to get. And that's why I think it was important for them to bring them back for Secret Wars. So when we get to Secret Wars, I do believe those movies will be fantastic, but that's also going to be the end of the MCU as we know it. So Fantastic Four is going to be, we don't know.
Right. What about Manure, Neo? You got thoughts on the movies next year in any way?
I don't watch movies. Neo, you?
I don't watch movies. I'm not a
I'll
DC
elaborate on that
person.
later.
I'm not a DC person, so the Superman trailer did nothing for me. Like it, but I'm not the target market for that. But it definitely didn't entice me to run out and see it night one at the theater. But I don't know what would have, just because I'm not a DC guy. I'm hopeful for Fantastic Four, but it's such an unknown at this point. Like, we've barely even seen a teaser image, let alone a trailer. Most Marvel stuff fairly recently has been very hit or miss. Actually, maybe this is a hot take. I actually didn't think Agatha was that bad. The last few movies have been pretty bad.
I thought it was pretty
I
good.
actually thought Agatha was, my wife and I both really enjoyed watching Agatha. I know that's not a movie, but and I saw chat talking about it. Like, I'm more excited for what Daredevil could be than I am the Superman movie, to be quite honest.
That's fair. Well, I mean, for me, I got canceled because my read on the Superman trailer was that I just thought it was okay, and that was not acceptable based on the comment section for me, because I was like, it's just okay, I mean, like I think we live in a very polarized world where okay means something to certain people that are rooting for that film. Like, 'cause to me, it's like, of course I want it to be successful. I would love to go watch a great Superman movie. Superman's my favorite DC character, like hands down. Like, unironically, I love Superman. I mean, I'm a Captain America fan. Like, I like a good Boy Scout. So like, I like that character, and James Gunn is great. I love all his movies, and I know that it's going to be competent, like, for sure, because it's going to be a B, but in truth, I think it needs to be an A, if not an A+, because it has to be, because if this is going to kick off this grand DC UEU and all this stuff, like, again, just from a numbers standpoint, if it doesn't make at least $800 million minimum, if it doesn't make that much money, like, Warner Brothers, at a certain point, you got to be successful in your movies. They lost so much with Aquaman and The Flash, and I know that that's not James Gunn's fault, but that's still their business. That's still Warner Brothers coffers that they're going to use to fund, this entire universe. So if it doesn't make money, like, and they're like, we can't make money with Superman, why would they think that they can make money making a Booster Gold TV show? You know what I mean? Like
I forgot I did watch The Flash. That was an entertaining movie. I'll give it that. Like there were some parts that
Deadpool and
were,
Wolverine was great. I love
haven't
that. I
seen
actually
that.
really love
Oh yeah,
Deadpool.
I haven't seen Deadpool and Wolverine yet.
Wow.
But-
And I mean, the other thing if we're looking back at last year, I mean, X-Men '97 was one of the best things to come out in the last.
Yeah,
forever.
that was great.
Like,
But why
And
was
I
it
think-
so good? Why was it
Yeah.
so good?
I mean, it just got the X-Men right, in my opinion.
The writing. Yeah.
Yeah, the writing.
And then they fired the
person-
guy.
Yeah,
So-
like idiot. Yeah.
It's like the same thing they did with James Gunn. Like you know,
Yeah.
like they just
Yeah.
they
Yeah.
don't. That's been the problem.
I almost wonder, does this year matter that much for Marvel in the long term? Because even if the stuff that comes out this year is meh, if they nail the X-Men, that's really all they need to do. Because that's the future of whatever the cinematic universe is going to be. Like, the Avengers are going to start to move to the side, and it's going to be the mutant era.
Yeah.
'Cause that's
Well,
where it's headed.
it seems
Do they
clear to
learn
me that
lessons from X-Men '97? Do they look at how successful '97 was, and they still have time to pivot on whatever they're going to do with live action? Do they look at that and go, "Okay, this really worked for people. We need to double down on this in live action"?
yeah, maybe.
I know no one wants to hear the opinion of someone that just said that they don't watch movies, but I just want to say, I mean, historically, I've watched some, and you guys can correct me. I remember enjoying every Superman movie I've ever watched. So eventually, I'm going to watch this new one coming, and I feel like I'll probably enjoy it. That's my prediction. I cannot say that for Marvel movies that I've watched. I've fallen asleep. Some of them have just been nonsensical. I watched this Madam Web. Sure, I watched it. It was crap, like everyone said, and that's what I anticipated. But I was like, I'm eating a pizza 2 nights in a row. I'll let this play until it's over. But haven't Superman movies always been great? Like, that's what I remember. They've always been like big and leave you feeling fantastic after.
I just hate
So-
the only one I didn't like was Superman 3. I think the rest I'm with you on that.
Yeah.
Even Superman 3 I could
Christopher
watch.
Reeve Superman. Yeah, Christopher Reeve Superman was fantastic, but I like what's his name's Henry Cavill, sort of like
He's
some of his
great.
portrayal of Superman I thought was okay, but I didn't think that Zack Snyder movie, it had issues in my
It
opinion.
was writing. It was all writing.
Yeah.
Cavill
it's-
wasn't the
yeah.
problem.
Cavill's
The-
a great Superman. He's perfect. He should have, like, I was kind of bummed out that they didn't keep him as Superman, but I knew that they were going to have to, start it over. But we have to remember also, and you hit it on the head, Superman is their Iron Man. Like, that has to be
Yeah.
a hit. Iron Man was so good, and it shot everything into it. People went, okay, that means that this is coming, got people ready. And that's what Superman is. Superman is all that. You have the Authority coming, you have Superwoman coming, you have the Green Lantern stuff coming. All of that stuff is coming at the same time as DC is starting this whole new absolute world to try and play in on that, give people a nice, easy jumping on point that are coming over from the new movies. So if that Superman is trash, it really throws a lot of lump in there, fucking a lot of hole in there.
For Ninja Comics, I think the way that we're saying Superman is Iron Man, it's like the movie has, like, Iron Man was so good, the universe built off of that. That's what it's not like they're not. I mean, I would say they're both A-list characters now, but Iron Man was not an A-list character,
Mm-mm.
14 years ago.
I would like to selfishly ask one more question. I won't say anything else about movies, but while I've got you guys, I am against subscriptions. Like, I don't like paying for stuff, right? On a monthly basis. But if I had to, in 2025, pay for one subscription to one platform or wherever to stream movies from, what should I get? I have Netflix, but like, I don't
YouTube.
have Disney Plus, so I've never seen the X-Men cartoon, which I want
YouTube.
to.
Yeah.
Wait, just to get rid of the advertisements, or they play movies
Yep,
on YouTube?
get rid of the advertisements. Go jump on YouTube. You don't need anything
Yeah.
else.
That was the
I watch more
conversation
YouTube than
yesterday.
TV at this point for sure.
Yeah,
So
so
you
I-
guys just said, forget Amazon, forget movie streaming services. The real value is getting rid of ads.
I think the answer to that question for real is HBO. I think that's probably
It's HBO or
the best.
Disney Plus. It's one of those
Okay.
two.
So YouTube trumps most of all because it's adding the most value to my daily life. But if I had to go entertainment, where to spend a couple hours watching something, HBO second to that, Disney Plus.
I mean,
That's my vote.
Like
I'm in.
me,
Okay.
for me, it's Crunchyroll because I love anime. So that's the thing. I
All right,
I
okay.
spend a lot of time on there. But like Amazon is just like a freebie that you get. Like you're getting that for the shipping, right? And then you,
Yeah.
they have a lot of good stuff on there. Like Amazon's a pretty good one.
OnlyFans has been mentioned in the chat. Nothing says 9.9. Accept your GPA account. Secret. I use a friend's GPA account. He knows it. For 3 years, I've been using his account, but I've gotten away without paying
Nice.
for the pricing service. Grateful to my friend. Thank you. Anyway,
Well,
sorry.
I'll just end this topic with this. I mean, it's funny you said you don't like subscriptions. I know that this is a controversial take, but I kind of have that. I don't know if you guys saw Quentin Tarantino had a clip where he was on, I think he was on Joe Rogan, and he was saying how he doesn't like TV. I kind of like have that same attitude where I also don't like TV because it's like the engine is for it to just never stop. You know, it's like if there's a mini series, then cool. There's a start and there's a stop. But like if it's like a TV show, you're always the victim of your own success, where it's like, oh, we're successful, so that means we got to keep the story going, and you're just like on this treadmill and it never wraps up. I much prefer movies, which is why I'm excited about Superman, Fantastic Four, because there's I guess it's a superhero universe, but in theory, there's an end to the movie. But I am interested in Fantastic Four in so much as, based on what I know a few people that work at Marvel, in their studio system. And to me, I'm just curious if they have the ability to make a great movie anymore, like in the building. Like, can they actually do it? Like, I'm sure, kind of like Mighty, what you were saying, like the Avengers is going to be great. The name brand alone is going to, and Robert Downey Jr.'s face is going to pull in people, and that's going to be successful. But I'm just curious if they have the ability to manufacture a great movie. And I really like Deadpool and Wolverine, and maybe that was an anomaly. So I would just like to see like that second sale to confirm that they have it in them, but I don't know if they do.
Did you watch Penguin?
All right.
Yeah, has
What's
everyone
that?
here saw Penguin?
Did you watch
I'm
Penguin?
jealous.
Excellent.
Dude.
I heard it was good.
I watched
do
the
need to
first
watch
couple and I loved it, and I just, for some reason, I haven't gone back to
It's so
finish
good.
it. But yeah,
I'm not
I
a DC
really
guy,
like it.
and it's so good.
Yeah. All right. Well, really quick, as kind of a last topic before we kind of wrap it up and give final thoughts and grab brag and lightning round and all this, I had to just bring this up one more time because Mr. Drama Man is here himself, Brian McClay, famously for Drama Alert. We're going into 2025, and we already kind of talked about 2024 drama, and it's kind of impossible to predict what's going to happen because that's what drama is. It just something happens and then it pops off. But I guess let me frame it like this: as someone who has been following the drama and does segments on it, and you're going to have to do segments on it in the future, tell me what you think people are going to be interested in when it comes to drama next year. And what I mean more specifically is, we've kind of had conversations where you've shared with me, and I think I can share this, is like, some people after a certain point are kind of like, all right, we get it. Like, we kind of got the drama and stuff, but there's still elements of drama that are important to talk about from time to time. So what drama do you think is relevant, will be relevant next year? Like, is the interpersonal drama between content creators, is that still going to be a thing? Or is drama like when I make a video where I say no comic book is rare, and then Mighty responds to me, and then Comic Collector Dad responds to me, and it's like, or Journo, responds to my Marvel rivals, and it's like, it's kind of drama, but we're talking about a topic, not necessarily each other.
Yeah,
what's your thoughts on 2025 drama?
I think people are sick of the drama and the community drama. I think it's a real turnoff. Whereas at the beginning of last year, I think it was kind of like the hot button that really took off with the whole Sticky Goose thing. And I think for the most part, people are kind of tired of the community drama. I think that there will be little sparks of it here and there, but most content creators that I think that are really, talking about that are getting tired of talking about it. Welcome to my world. It's not fun to talk about community drama. And then the problem happens is when it happens to you, right? And if you're a content creator, because we all know what happens when somebody takes a shot at you, you feel a way about it and you want to take a shot back. So I think that's the thing when it comes to community drama. It all depends on where that community drama happens to how much we see of it. for me, I'm trying really hard to keep the drama alert, the comic book collectibles drama alert segment more towards the things that you're talking about. I'm talking about, diamond issues, thefts, things that, is bad stuff that's happening, but that might have, might be able to be fixed, and you can kind of turn it into a good thing, because people are just tired of the drama stuff. There will be places for that drama to foster, but it won't foster everywhere like it did at the end of this last year, this 2024. I think there was at some point during the end of 2024 where most people saw a big bump when they would talk about certain drama aspects, and then they said, okay, I'm going to stay on that, and they kind of rode that wave. But I think that that wave kind of killed itself out, because people are really tired of it. And who wants to see it? Especially, like, I think that we're seeing some changes in the whole world, and people are, hopefully trying to say, okay, we've got these changes happening. Let's try and think different about things. Or we're seeing some things that can make us, we all want, to get for our money to be more valuable. We all want for our jobs to be more secure and stuff like that. And I think that's kind of where a little bit glass is half full rather than glass is half empty type thing. But the drama stuff is very tough to deal with as when you're a content creator, especially when you have, I've kind of pigeonholed myself, I guess, or that's my albatross right now, is that I have that segment on one show, but because that segment has kind of been popular, people kind of look at me as, okay, that drama guy, which I don't have a problem with, but what I'm getting at is it gets tired talking about that community drama. It does. It's not fun. As a matter of fact, we were doing a drama segment the other night. Somebody sends me the Sticky Goose content where he's trolling these NFT guys, and at some point in the video, I just is like, this is cheesy. Like, I don't even want to finish this video. It's not. It's kind of gotten to the point where it feels forced. It feels fake. It doesn't feel like it's even worth reporting on to this point. So I'm going to stick towards that industry stuff, that industry drama and stuff like that for the future. But there will be places where it'll grow, and it'll, foster little clicks, and we'll see what happens in those places.
May I jump in here, Brian? I want to piggyback right off of what you just said. So it's like, you have the drama segment, but you also, hey, Drew, what's up?
Hello.
I had to bring on the man who obviously, he's the biggest drama.
That's right. I am the problem.
So you have the drama alert segment, but you have other things that are meaningful that go on your channel. You have other people that come into your environment. So if you get sick of it and you decide, I'm doing a bit too much of this is a drag, you can drop that. You're still great. You have content, your channel's still working, your audience is still there, right? And that's different from people that come into listen, I'm just speaking from what I've observed, and it just makes reasonable sense, I guess. But like, let's say someone wants to jump into the content creating game, and everyone's quick to say drama gets clicks, drama gets views, but be careful what you're setting yourself up for. Because once you get a taste of that, you now have to perpetuate it. And sometimes you're going to be forced to manufacture it. And all you're doing is surrounding yourself with shit. You just miserable stuff all day, every day, so that you could produce content for people that are seeking some entertainment. What you're not establishing is any loyalty with an audience, because they can see a car wreck anywhere. So they don't care if you come or go. By the time you get burnt out, you're gone. They're on to the next person trying to catch the numbers wave. But none of the numbers ever get big enough to become meaningful. None of them ever make anybody any real money. So you've surrounded yourself with negativity for a vanity metric that you're going to get sick of and drop the ball anyway. And some new guy's going to come in, or gal, to perpetuate the BS, right? So like, what's your objective when you're entering content creation? What's your long game? Think about that. Thinking about drama as a way to get views is short term, and you're not building a foundation. Like, terrible steps in the direction of being a long-term content creator. You have established something very different. You can dabble in drama aggressively or not. You're still solid. Other people coming new, if you just whip up a drama channel, you're gone in a couple of days, man. Like, I mean, that's an exaggeration, but you're not here to stay.
Yeah, you're 100% right. 100% right.
Yeah. Anyone else got anything to say about drama in 2025?
Nope.
Well, I'm sure there's going to be lots of CGC things if we count that
The
as
grading
drama,
drama is going to be huge
PSA
in
and all that stuff.
2025.
Yeah, and that's what we
Yeah.
talked about yesterday. It's like we didn't really classify that as drama so much. It's more
No, I've been accused so many times of like, oh, like, you know, Swag, you just talk about drama and all this stuff. And I'm like, wait a minute.
Don't.
Like, I think that there's such a difference. You know, I think it, you know, again, it's the quote, like the small minds talk about people, medium minds talk about events, and big minds talk about ideas. And I think that if you are doing interpersonal content beef with people, that's just reality TV. It's fun. I love it sometimes, you know, but I don't want to exist in it. Like you were saying, Manu, if you stare into the abyss stares back, you know, it's bad
Right.
for your energy,
Mhm.
you know? So, but then, you know, if you're talking about CGC, you know, this is like an event, this thing happened. That's kind of like a elevated form of drama. And then ultimately what we're doing here, you know, which is trying to unpack these ideas in a very detailed way amongst all of us. You know, I think that that's us trying to keep it elevated. And even though we're getting into sort of juicy topics that you could quantify as drama, I think that, you know, this is the best way to, you know, talk about it. Cause I think it's
We still
interesting.
bring value, Swag. Drama,
Yeah.
but value. We'll reflect on the drama to bring value, to move some conversation forward, you know, for sure.
Absolutely.
The
All right,
companies
well-
do enough dumb shit that you don't need to go after
Yeah.
individuals to find your
Amen.
drama.
True.
Yeah. All right. Well, a couple more things as we wind it down, guys. I mean, I wanted to say shout out to the panel, shout out to everyone in chat for hanging out tonight. What a stream it's been. What an exciting time to be in the comic book hobby. 2025 just around the corner. Drew, I
Yo.
feel like because you hopped in, I got to just throw you a bag here. We're in the grab bag section. I just got a quick couple
All
of
right.
topics. I'm just going to throw it out to each person, and you guys just got
do
to
it.
run with it. But I'm going to say this, spoiler alert for one of my predictions for my predictions video of 2025, my individual predictions.
Okay.
One of them I have is Comic Cons. I think Comic Cons are going to be massive. And I think that New York, San Diego, C2E2, I think they're all going to get record attendance, or they're going to go back to pre-COVID attendance. I think it's been long enough.
anime.
Or anime, yes.
Celebrity.
Anime,
Yeah.
anime cons are huge, but I think that, you know, I'm hopeful that the economy will be a little bit better. Maybe people are more willing to spend that money to go to San Diego or New York or whatever, and they'll have a little bit more of that, you know, discretionary income to spend. And those attendances, which, as maybe some of you guys know, like, while last year was great as far as attendance for, say, like a San Diego Comic-Con, it still is not like it was pre-COVID. But I think that this year we have a chance to do that. But Drew, what's your thoughts? Grab bag topic 2025 cons, whether they be Como Con or San Diego Comic Con.
Yeah. My hope and what I think is probably likely to happen is I think you're going to see a return of the major cons, like the cons that are well established, whether they be the big ones like you talked about, NYCC, C2E2, ECCC, San Diego, even some of the other ones like Fan Expo Dallas has kind of made some gains over the years, like, and established itself pretty well. Baltimore, Planet that I do in Kansas City is really solid for a Midwest show that's not in Chicago. I think you're going to see the field hopefully work towards narrowing, because I hope people are going to start returning to just the proven shows. And then I think you're going to continue to see the small local comic shows, more so than comic cons, really continue to gain back some, I don't know how best to put it, just, increase their slice of the pie, some more market share with that, because I think people have finally realized that what we roll up into the phrase of Comic-Con has very, very little to do with actual comics anymore. So unless you're into celebrities or you're into anime or, crafting stuff that's nerd related, an actual Comic-Con, like big major comic convention, isn't going to do you all that much if you're just working on building out your run of ASM or Batman or whatever, unless you're looking for something that's really, really, really huge, like major key level, and you want to buy it in person. I don't think you need those big cons. You're going to start gravitating towards those littler shows where you can get a lot more value and actually find more of the stuff that you're looking for. So that's what I'm looking for in 2025. Completely unrelated to the fact that I'm doing my own show now, and we're going to do 2 in 2025. Completely unrelated, but yeah.
Well, if you're in the Midwest,
I love our small local shows.
Yeah, they're
Like,
fantastic shows.
That's what I go to, and it is just cards and comics. Like half the room is cards, half the room is comics, and they are generally pretty busy. Like they have a good number of people showing up.
Yep. Yeah, even if it's just 100 or 150 people in a American Legion Hall, like a show I do in St. Louis, 150 people in a room that's small enough feels like a lot of people. And as long as they're the right 150 people that are spending money, it can be even better than some of those big multi-day shows where you're standing there in the mass of people and they're all just walking by to go get a autograph in Celebrity Row.
Yeah. All right. Well, Neo, I got one for you now. We got to talk about taxes. All of a sudden, I know it's not financial advice. This is not financial advice, boys and girls, but the $600 rule, the itemization, that was a big deal, was supposed to come in, and that was going to have an effect on a lot of, flippers out there, right? Where all of a sudden your PayPal is going to send you a 1099K or something, or your Venmo or whatever. We're not going to get the $600 rule yet. They keep punting it, but this year we're getting $5,000 down from $20,000. I know you mentioned the tax thing to me, and this is why I'm going to hand it off to you. But what do we got to know, Mr. Accountant?
Hashtag not an accountant. The best thing you should know is talk to an actual CPA. Number one. 2, it's a $5,000 rule now, and it is in effect for 2024. So if you took in $5,000 or more on eBay or PayPal, you are getting a 1099, and you better know how to handle that when you get it. It's coming. You cannot avoid it. Well, I guess if you're just on all cash, you can, but that's pretty hard to do in 2024/2025 unless all you're doing is setting up at shows. But yeah, $5,000 limit, the 1099, the tax man's a coming. And if you're getting a 1099 and not reporting eBay income is one thing, but when you get a 1099 attached to it, that's a whole other bag of cats. So it's here. We'll see where it ends up settling. The $600 thing they keep punting. They're saying next year it'll be $2,500 and then it'll go to $600. I honestly don't think we ever see $600. I wouldn't be shocked if it stayed at $5K and sits there. That seems like a more realistic number. $20,000 was a bit ridiculous, to be fair, but
no,
$600.
Man, let's petition back for $20K, please.
The one thing I will say
with the $20K number was it was $20K and a certain number of transactions. A lot of people would hit the $20K number, but scoot under the number of transactions if you just sold big stuff.
Wait,
So
both of them had to apply?
Back in the day, it used to. Now that is not the case.
Yeah.
Got it.
It's also I will say, and again, not financial advice, but from my my CPA that I wish was my CPA, who is Clear Value Tax, a wonderful YouTube channel that I watch basically every video he ever makes. But he did say that it's per platform, the $5,000 rule. So you can do like $4,999 on PayPal, and then you could do like $4,999 on Cash App, and then you do the other thing on Venmo, and you could still be under it. So there's a little tip, tips and tricks.
Yeah.
All right. Well, next up here, let me go to Brian. I want to hear about original art going in next year.
Ooh.
I thought that this last year was like a lot of people kind of moving into original art. But if I'm being fair, like for me, anecdotally, if I made a video kind of covering like, oh, here's the Deadpool page that sold, views weren't high, right? And it's understandable. Not all comic book collectors want to hear about original art. But if I were to make a prediction, I think it's still going to trend upwards, and more people in comics are going to like start to move over to that original art. But what's your take on where we're going with art in 2025?
All right, so I got 2 big things for 2025. One of them, obviously, you hit it. The original art game is going to continue to gather new fans. I think that the original art collectors are at the tip of the spear. I think those guys are thinking. I think most of them think the way that we used to about comics, where it was about collecting and a little bit of investment. Because I think that original art is one of the few things in the comic book world that is actually rare enough to be an investment these days. So I think that's a huge thing. I also think that you have cons like OAX Con, the Collector Con. You have all these cons that are built around more like those rare things like original art, not just comic art. We're talking anime art, video game art, all kinds of any type of original art around nostalgia based things, toys, collectibles, cartoons, whatever.
Animation cells.
Yeah,
Heck yeah.
those are all major hitters. Rest in peace to Mikey, who was one of the guys who got me. It's really looking at original art and stuff like that. And I think that he was like way ahead of the game when it came to that type of thing. So even the stuff that he was saying 2 years ago, I think you can still go and listen to him and see those type of things happening next year. So I think that's a huge deal. And the other problem with that original art is you have less and less guys who are traditional anymore. So the original art is even more rare, right? Which is crazy. The other big thing that is crazy to me that I hear a lot of people not talking about is crowdfunding. And I put it in the chat. I think that crowdfunding in comic books, it's been a thing for a while, but it was more about, comic book people reading rather than collecting. And I think something happened this year, and I blame Mark Spears partly for it, but I think something happened where you had these small print runs of these IPs or these comic books that got, a little heat under them. And because the print run was so small that there was these huge flips being made. And you look at some of the stuff with Mark Spears that he's doing right now, those are the original Monsters Kickstarter. There was a Bride cover from the original Monsters Kickstarter, which was issue 7, I think, in the run. It was just a regular cover. And it sold the other day for like $900, $800 or something like that. So there are ways to make money speculation wise in that game more than ever. And I don't think that's ever been the case with crowdfunding stuff.
Yeah. It's interesting that you brought that up. I keep going back to like my video set. I'm going to do like predictions and stuff. But one of my predictions for 2025 was my drama prediction is that I think that we're going to get our first, not a first, but I think we're going to start to have crowdfunding issues within comics because it's been going it had a bunch of issues years ago when it started and but it's picked up and gained steam and everything. But I just kind of feel like we've been sort of in smooth sailing with it for the last couple of years. And a lot of the big publishers have been using it and artists and big money's going into it. I don't know. We haven't, it's like the wall of worry. There hasn't been
when
a
you say
big,
issues, do you mean people not delivering or do you mean not enough funding for all the stuff that people want to get
I
done?
think it'll be something not enough, not delivering, not getting fulfillments, or it'll be something like Brian said, imagine something gets spec'd on and then, I don't know, there might just be some scandal. What if the creator, they make more, or something like
they
that.
held back a stack of books.
Yeah.
And then they start,
or something. Or it's going to
They
be
didn't have a
something
flamethrower to destroy the overprint, just goes downhill from there.
I don't know if you guys heard,
or even if imagine if Marvel starts to go oh, we're going to crowdfund the ASM current run because we're going to do a variant cover, and it's gonna be why are we crowdfunding you? You're a giant company, it's gonna be that. I think that's gonna start to be interesting.
Did you see what Brian Polito said the other day about starting his own crowdfunding? He's doing his own, he's gonna jump off a Kickstarter for the Coffin Comics stuff, and he's doing his own Coffin Comics crowdfunding. So all of his stuff's gonna be in-house. And if you guys don't think that Whatnot is thinking about doing a crowdfunding thing to do all their things, I totally see. We already see Dynamite. Shout out to Nikki Barucci. I saw him in the chat. We already see Dynamite, Skybound. Boom Studios jumped on, was the originator of it. They jumped on doing these crowdfunding when they're already a big publisher, because they can get so much more done through crowdfunding than they ever could,
And
So-
it's already been a proven concept over like in toys. Like you've got Hasbro Pulse, you've got Mattel Creations. It's
Amen.
permeating collectibles beyond,
Yeah.
just
and
Like
not
Todd
only-
McFarlane does crowdfunding for his
Yep.
stuff.
Yeah.
he did that giant
It's like a
spawn.
huge name. It's like, give me your money.
Yeah, and there was that the Skybound thing kind of did this weird crowdfund like that was big pushback too. But so I think some things like that are going to start to bubble over. That's my kind of prediction. But let me kind of move on here and shout out to Dev in the chat who mentioned AI. This is what I was going to go to Manu with.
Oh,
AI.
oh shit! You're hitting me with this one.
Grab bag topic. AI art, AI and comic industry. Just the blanket. AI. Tell me about it.
I mean, it's here. It's here to stay. It's hereer to stayer. It's just going to get more of everything that everyone doesn't want it to be. There's no fighting it. There's no avoiding it. Integrate it. Learn how to use it to your benefit. Learn how to profit from it. Learn how to take advantage of it. Learn how to identify it. Hopefully corporations and companies do the right thing, marking and tagging images and artwork that was, either fully created by or AI contributed to. But the idea of, holding on to principle and avoiding it, you got to let go of that. It's not going anywhere. It makes things too easy, too quick. It makes the companies more profitable. It's going to make creatives have to be, a different sort of creative. Somehow introducing humanality, a personality into your work that's identifiably you is going to be the key. That's going to be the ticket. Because in terms of just making something that has eye appeal, well, that's done in 5 seconds, right? So if you were just trying to create something that looked good, you're done. If you were just trying to write an email, it's written already. I said jokingly, AI has already written 2025. That's not that much of a joke, and it's a real thing. It's a real concern. I don't. Am I still here? 1 second, guys.
You're there.
Skynet taking him out.
See the AI
I can still hear you. We can still all hear you here. Yeah.
Perfect. Thank you. So I don't get into the specifics of it. Like, I'm not fighting any AI fights, I'm not taking anyone's side. I just know it's here and we just have to navigate that world, or our world now, in sort of a different way. Like, we have to find a way to appreciate the things that we don't mind being tainted by it, and then really celebrate the things that have nothing to do with it, guard those in a different fashion. But it's a new world and it's coming rapidly, right? And it's not just going to affect our space in comic books, but it's going to affect everything. What I do like, well, I like a lot of things about it, but there are things that I don't like about it as well. But what I do really love is it really highlights the things of old, right? It really makes the things that had nothing to do with technology so much more special. Historical pieces, things written a long time ago, old art, original art. Those are treasures, even more now than they were before. So I guess that's my AI thing, without getting into the weeds of all things AI.
Well said.
Can I jump in on that real quick?
Just
real quick.
Yeah.
So I just thought it would be funny. I just went and looked on Chat GPT. What are the new things that will happen in the comic book industry in 2025? And it kicked out.
Ooh.
DC Entertainment is set to revolutionize digital comics by introducing vertical scrolling formats to optimize for smartphones. Marvel is also adapting its publication formats. Market growth, it says global comic book market is projected to experience substantial growth. It says the new releases and industry speculations in January 2025 will see a variety of new comic book and manga releases from publishers like Panini, Planeta, Mostros, Norma, all these names that we don't normally hear. So that's very interesting. So even AI will tell you what's coming in 2025 better than a lot of us can. So
yeah,
I don't know. It said growth, so
well, it's on the back of manga. It's not comics.
It doesn't know. I wonder if it's throwing manga into that.
Well, speaking of growth, in a niche thing, Ryan, I'm coming to you with this one. I went back and I looked at my predictions for 2024 video, and one of them was pulps. This year we got pulps, and they came out, and it was like exciting for like 2 days, and then I feel like I didn't hear about it ever again. Even the sellers who were selling pulps, like I feel like I didn't see them post as many pulps anymore. 2025, sell me the dream. Like, as a golden age person, like, are pulps ever gonna hit? Is this a real market?
I mean, I was telling people not to buy them. So I'm like, my stance on pulps was, and it still is the same. Like, if you like pulps, cool. But I said wait a year or two after the CGC grading stuff, you know, for like prices to get a better idea what the prices actually are with them, because they have a census, but that census is you can't trust it for a while, and it's because you don't really know what's out there. But I mean, I'll be honest, like, I've been fairly surprised, at least with like the well-known pulps, they have continued to sell for some pretty big numbers. And so, I mean, like, because one of the ones, I know you don't like this one, but I've always wanted the Batwoman
The
one.
Weird Tales
and,
or whatever.
and
yeah,
it
we
keeps,
know.
it
Yeah,
keeps
yeah,
having
yeah.
big numbers. And like, I was like, oh,
Yeah.
maybe this time it'll sell low, and it doesn't. And so, you know, like the big recognizable ones, you know, are probably, maybe they're stable. I don't know, but it's just, I feel like there's too much of an unknown with them that I would not be rushing out to buy those. And I agree. Like, we have been seeing like people really pushing them, and I wonder if they like moved through their inventory and now they don't have them, and now it's like, all right, we're done with pulps now.
I found a cache of Dave Stevens books and forgot about.
I mean,
Yeah.
it's often the similar people we saw selling Dave Stevens and Bronze Age Horror,
Bronze Age Horror,
you know, like all that kind of stuff. So yeah, I mean, I think anything, like, I mean, if you like the collectible, yeah, go out and buy it. But I think that's the risk is still high on like, you know, people gradually coming across, seeing those sales numbers and maybe having boxes of pulps. And I know a lot of pulps don't have any value. I mean, are very low value. Like, I watch a lot of the like A1 comic sales, and they usually have like a pulp segment, and it's like they have tons of them that they sell for like $10, $20. A lot of them are that. And so you just gotta, like, I imagine like every big collection like that has some big ones sprinkled in. And so you just gotta be careful with it. I would not rush into it if you want them. And, you know, every once in a while I'm tempted to bid. Like, I can't remember if I bid or not. Like, I went after that. I was interested in that Shadow *1, the first appearance of the Shadow. Like, that was
a cool one for sure.
It's like, that's like super rare. It's like the, you know, kind of like the precursor to Batman. Like, there's something pretty cool about that. But generally, I'd be pretty cautious with a lot of that right now.
Yeah. Well, we'll see if you know, pulps make a push in 2025 in any kind of way, or become a story. All right, Mighty. Last one for you here. I got, you know, you talked about selling platforms and like how many there are and the availability of it. I thought eBay Live was going to be a thing this year. Still kind of not a thing, you know, but they were at New York Comic Con and they did have a big presence there. And that was kind of interesting. So in 2025, let's say eBay Live officially launches. We're out of beta. It's now out to the general audience. Based on what you've been saying with the availability of books and selling platforms, do you think that this is a good thing overall? Do you think people will hop on this? Is this going to be a silver bullet to all your selling platform needs?
No, I still think Whatnot is a better platform, in my opinion. It's more user friendly, the ease of use for that type of selling. So no, I think it's just another avenue for people who want to sell books. And now that Whatnot has kind of, I don't want to say cleaned up its image a little bit, because that's really what they've done. It's just, it's going to be personal preference. To me, I'm not even sure how to get on eBay Live. You know, I get messages all the time about, here, so-and-so's going live, so-and-so's going live. But if I had to go search for a live stream that I'm looking for, I have no idea how to do it. But if I, you know, Metropolis will go live sometimes and I'll get a notification, I'll hop on for a little bit. But outside of that, no. I don't think eBay Live makes a big dent. I think it depends what the collector is looking for. There's a lot of different collectors that collect a lot of different things. So a certain type of collector may find what they're looking for on one platform versus another. And that's how I think it's going to play out.
Yeah. Well, we'll definitely have to see. And with that, we're going to get into our final thoughts. Gentlemen, we've done an amazing job. We've gone for almost 6 hours of content in 2 days. You know, it's been incredible to hang out with you guys. I feel honored and lucky to have amazing friends and colleagues in the comic collecting hobby. And I can't wait to continue it with you guys in 2025. And shout out to everyone in chat for hanging out with us here tonight. Fellas,
think of all the videos
words?
you can cut from this. You know, you won't have to make
Oh my
content
God.
for
Yeah,
a
this is
month.
6 months of
Good
content.
choice.
Guys, I'm going to go on
Sure.
vacation all of January, and you guys can just rewatch these segments again and again.
Feed this to an AI engine, and you're good to go.
That's
Yeah.
dude.
They literally have that. It's called Opus Clip. I use it
Yeah.
all the time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know what's interesting? I can't I'm looking forward. Like, imagine if I could just drop my entire catalog into like an AI machine, and you can just replicate me. Just be like, just do a video that I would do. You know,
Mhm.
just some video, especially if it's like an evergreen video. You know. Anyways, any final thoughts for you guys going into next year? Any resolutions?
I need to be better about listing books regularly for sale.
Yeah.
I have been so bad about that. Like I don't know. I've had other things I've been focusing on, and so that's definitely been one of the big ones that's fallen to the side of the road. But that's probably my comic resolution for the sales side of things. Like I'd be interested because I saw someone comment on this on yesterday's. They said like what collecting goals did you accomplish in 2024? And so I'm trying to think like what would I be going for in 2025? I usually never like to talk about books I'm interested in because then it's just like you create more competition for yourself. But yeah, like early detectives, those are always I think those are my goal. Like that's what I always like to look for. And so I just kind of like I scan through every auction I can and look for that kind of stuff.
That's why I never win any.
This is not my final thought. I want to contribute something else, but Ryan mentioned eBay. I don't do enough selling on eBay, so why not get more? I do very little selling on eBay. But speaking of, someone did just make me a $600 offer on a 9.6 Wizard One newsstand. If you're in the chat, the last sale was $675. I don't want to accept that offer on eBay. Message me on Instagram and I'll take $600. Back to someone's final thoughts, please.
Anybody else have any
I'll
business
add it to my
propositions
1%
they'd like to
on that.
make?
What happened?
Oh, I was just ribbing you for trying to make deals here on the stream.
I'm sorry. I
You know
never
what's
stopped.
actually, you know what's so funny about that is like I've definitely had people message me on eBay and been like, "Hey, love your YouTube channel. Like, would you take this offer?" And I'm like, "Well,
No.
I can't say anything. You know, like I can't. I wish there was some magical phrase. We should all invent a magical phrase that permeates in the comic community. That's like, hey, find me here instead.
I get those a lot, and I'm like, yeah, I cannot respond to
No,
this.
there
like
is
eBay
one. I can't say it here though because if it becomes too common, it's going to get flagged as well. There is a sure shot way to get them to Instagram. There is a phrase that does not get flagged. I'll tell you later.
Oh, I'm going to ask you about that later.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Well, other than eBay hacks, anyone have final thoughts?
I don't know if this is a hot take, but I think this is something we've discussed in phone calls. I think 2025 could be the year that the comic community enters the gambling space. They teased it with the X-Men packs and some other stuff. I think between that and I'm still waiting, and I still think at some point in time it's coming. Someone's going to figure out the mystery pack game and take it to another level like we have on the sports card side of things.
It's kind of in Whatnot though. Like I watch Pop Comics every once in a while, and he buys a lot of stuff on Whatnot where it's like you're picking like a number, like there's like a bunch of different like packs of comics that are up there, and like some of them are hits and some of them aren't, and like he kind of has like I feel like that's kind of there.
That's kind of it, but I feel like it hasn't caught. Like in the sports card side of things, literally they're called repacks instead of mystery boxes. They are essentially keeping the entire market afloat right now. That's how big of business it is. It dominates the sports card market. It's single-handedly driving up prices on things in the secondhand market. And I just feel like someone's going to figure it out on the comic book side and lean into that gambling-like nature that a lot of us have in us. And maybe it's just a sports card thing. Maybe this is one of those things that don't cross over because gambling's kind of a little bit more ingrained in sports cards because of the pack-like nature. But I feel as humans in general, and Americans specifically, most of us, the gambling is everywhere now in the country. And I just feel like comic books have yet to crack that code, and look out when they do.
Right.
I'll say this along those lines. I think that you're 100% right on the money. Without getting too inside baseball and talking about who it is, there is somebody that's going to be putting together something on that type of level that I think is amazing, where not only are you getting like new product in it, you're getting, you have a chance to pull like, those killer grails in it, original art, where it's part repack, part new product. And if that hits and people talk about it like Whatnot, the Whatnot packs were talked about, I think that just sends it into a new stratosphere. And
And
it
their
could
name
be
is Bryce Comics.
I don't know.
I
We'll
mean,
see.
kind of was that.
A little bit. Yeah. I mean, well, here's the problem with those mystery packs. Whereas in the card world, I don't know if repacks have as bad as a negative connotation that mystery packs in the comic world have, because I think so many people in those early Whatnot days, let's say the first 3 years of Whatnot or first 2 years of Whatnot, it was so mystery pack heavy and it screwed a lot of people. So I feel like when people think about mystery packs in the comic world, there's more of a negative connotation, and there's not as much as that in the card world. But I don't know, you would know that better, Neo.
There definitely was in cards for a while, but the script has flipped on it as they have kind of modernized the product. I mean, there is literally companies that are going around spending hundreds, like tens of thousands of dollars at card shows buying up inventory to then literally make their own professional repacks and professional packaging and selling those to Whatnot streamers to then open it almost like a box of cards from Topps. I mean, that's the extreme level that it's gotten to now. Like, there's sports card mystery packs that you could hit a $10,000, $20,000 Michael Jordan out of. So imagine buying into a Spider-Man mystery pack, mystery box, and the chase is an AF-15 1.5.
So, I mean, that's I feel like that's kind of like what Torpedo was doing kind of early on in the pandemic with their mystery boxes. But it felt like this is why I was going to ask you, like, are card collectors okay not getting their value back? Because that seems like that's a big challenge on the comic side, is that people always want to like at least get their value, and you can't do that if you're going to have a big prize. Like, if you have a big prize, you've got to, like, you can't get your value back.
That's where the gamble comes in. And they'll structure them. So the way it'll work in sports cards, it'll be they'll present a floor value and the hit value. So let's say the floor value is $500, and let's say the top tier chase is $10K and the buy-in price is $1,500. A majority of people are going to lose. Your floor value is a $500 book, but maybe your hit is a high grade Hulk 181. Mm-hmm. And they'll price it accordingly where they can profit off of it. And, some people are definitely going to lose in it, but not everybody is. Someone will hit big, and the chase for the big hit is what drives it. And usually the better ones, they'll put 50 for sale in a Whatnot live stream, sell all 50, and then open all 50 on camera, all in one whole kit and caboodle. So here's what the floor value is, here's what the ceiling value is. All 50 are being sold, all 50 are being opened. So there's less chance of back end shenanigans because you're seeing.
I feel like you have to do that, because so many people like question if like the hits actually went out,
because that's how you know that, okay, someone did hit a Hulk 181 and an 8-0 or not, whatever the chase is. But I just think it's driving so much money in cards that someone is going to figure it out. And I don't know if it's exactly the same as it works in cards or not. There's just so much money behind it right now that I just feel like eventually it's going to trickle down to this side of the world. I just think someone's going to put a ton of money into it and try it. And maybe, maybe Brian already knows exactly what's coming in it. And whether it works or not, I don't know. But, we as a country and as a people are so exposed to gambling right now.
Oh, it's
And
huge.
I just think it comes over. I really think it does.
It's the one thing that the comics community never had was that pack luck type of thing. And I told Jack this when he hit me up and he talked to me about it the first time. I said, dude, this is what the comics world has been missing, that pack luck excitement, whether you want to call it gambling or what, but there's that excitement that comes with watching people pull a super fractor Otani out of a pack, and they putting that up on social media, and the excitement over it will cause people to say, okay, the next time I see those being sold, I'm going to buy some, or I'm going to go, if I'm walking in a mall, a store, and I see a box, I'm going to buy a box now because I saw somebody going crazy over what they pulled. So if those show
Magic
up
the Gathering, when Magic the Gathering did that Lord of the Rings thing, and they had the one ring, and Post Malone ended up buying it and stuff, I was like, dude, like, why doesn't Marvel do this? Like they could have done polybagged variant covers, They could have had the 6 Infinity Stones where there's only one of them and you have to collect all 6 or whatever. It's like they could have something
drawn by Frank Miller and they'd look terrible.
I would be shocked if we don't see a blind whatnot pack this year with serialized comics in it.
Yep.
Yeah.
Not a limited to 100 print run, like an actual, this is 1 out of 100, this is 2 out of 100, where it's stamped on the foil cover on the front.
Yeah, the whatnot packs are so successful. They're clearly going to continue to do.
Yeah.
What if there was a 1-of-1 chase? I mean, what was the most limited print in the one that the last
5,
one that they did?
I think 5. The Reds were numbered to 5, maybe.
Were they actually hard numbered, or was it just that there was supposedly
they were hard numbered? But they're already their next. You've already said it. Their next go around will have those numbered in there.
Yeah, they should be putting one of those out every month.
Yeah,
but that's how it starts. That's what gets people in the thrill of, oh, I want to pay money and rip something blind, and maybe I don't win the big prize, but I want that thrill of the chase, and then that leads right into the mystery box thing.
I think it's
the problem is
the cultural shift that's going to have to happen, because LCSs have used the mystery bag thing for years as just a way to get rid of crap inventory. The problem is everybody's been conditioned to know that at best you're going to find a $5 book or a $10 book. So everybody just immediately equates blind bags and comics with absolute crap. So it's going to have to be an entire mind shift change in the hobby before people are going to really get behind it. And I think you guys, what you've alluded to, Neo, is like, they're going to have to be out there. They're going to have to be in front of God and everybody, showing somebody actually getting the payout.
Well,
it might not be seller. It might not be that big of a culture shift, because I feel like readers are already conditioned to that, because when you open up the book, you never know if you're going to get a shit story or a complete shit story.
That's true. And it's a generational thing. People who've been shopping at LCSs for decades know what to expect, but then you've got everybody who's come in the last 10 years where
maybe
it's not quite as prevalent as it used to be, that haven't had that experience and are more inclined to be on whatnot and watching pack rips and stuff like that. So.
I think Ryan asked, I think it was Ryan that asked earlier about how do younger people come into the hobby. Bring in gambling, bring in a chase,
I mentioned that, like, PSA could be like the flip that they
for sure, but that's another path to do it, is bring in a gambling aspect to it.
Get them gambling.
The problem with it is you can't push it too much, like how you said whatnot should be doing it once a month. I think if they did that once a month, it would kill it some way. If whatnot really just flooded the market with it. I think that's why they need to be smart and just stick to the cons. Okay, we're going to do one a con until people get more okay with it. Because if all these companies were sending out these packs and doing it once a month, I think it would just be so flooded, and it would kind of turn people off. I could be wrong about that, but that's what I feel like.
I feel like it can't be the whatnot type stuff. It has to be like vintage, like you're saying, like it's an ASM or an ASM 1 or an AF 15 or
I think it's
something like that. Like
I think there's two versions of it. There's the ultra modern whatnot side of it, that's coming from a manufacturer. That's not really a repack. That's almost like buying a pack of cards.
Mhm.
It's like walking into the store and buying a pack of Pokemon cards off the shelf. Like, you know what's in there to a degree. You know that it's these 3 different variant covers of this particular book or these subsets of books, and you're just chasing which limited number you're going to get. Versus a repack, it could be structured any way that you want. You could do a Silver Age repack. You could do a Spider-Man repack. You could do a Wolverine repack. You could do an X-Men repack. You could do a Golden Age repack if you want to. It's however whoever is building it wants to put it together that's going to work with their audience.
And I've got to think that this, even looking at it from a shop level, you know, how many shops in the world really get enough of an order on the FOC to get a 1 in 1,000 variant? Maybe 10 in the world, 15 if people really go crazy. If you start blind bagging and hard numbering books that are 1 of 5, 1 of 8, 1 of 10, 1 of 25, and making it a legit chase like that, everybody, regardless of their size, those mega stores are still going to order a shit ton. But everybody else, the little guys, may hop in there and bump their orders by 10% or 20%, especially if, you know, this catches in the market and people are excited about it. And then now you're not just relying on those 10 to 15 mega retailers to float your boat for your super rare books. You're getting everybody into the game. You got to think that that would be more lucrative for the publishers than just the flat, you know, 1 in 500, 1 in 1,000, whatever variant.
So I want to give my final point, and I'm going to hop off because by me, I got to get up in like 5 hours. But
Yeah, we got to wrap it up. Yeah.
My final thought was honestly leading in from what you guys just said, and that is, I think this year weekly releases and moderns and new books are going to outshine vintage. With all the uncertainty going on with CGC, with PSA, you know, joining the chat, you know, mid-year roughly. I think the first half of this year, maybe even 2/3 of this year, it's going to be new books, weekly books driving the market right now. And that's what I think the shift or the early timid portion of this year, if not most of it, is going to be with new books, people buying them as opposed to vintage. So I want to thank you guys for having me, but I got to get some sleep. So
yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Mighty. Appreciate
take care,
you.
guys. Good night,
man. Yep.
Well, 2 men are down. I think it's time we wrap up the stream. But gentlemen, thank you so much for hanging out tonight. Everyone in the chat, thank you for hanging out. We had like 260 people at a certain point, which was great to see. And Manu just jumped back on.
Manu
Perfect
keeps-
time to say goodbye.
Right back.
You know,
He
so
refuses to give up.
yeah. But gentlemen, thank you all again. Everyone's YouTubes and links are in the description. If you guys are not subscribed to everybody here, please do so. They make better content than I do. And for some reason, you guys tune into me. So don't tune into them instead. All right, guys. Thanks so much for watching.
Emmy back
Have
there,
a
man.
wonderful, safe New Year's. Use Ubers. And we'll see you in 2025.
See you.
Peace out.
Gable on some comic books.